irresistible you. My heart has gone to you, and while I exist, I'll be irresistibly drawn to you. I know from the first it was so. I was caught in the undertow and was lost from the moment we kissed. Irresistible you, you're in the heart of me, and your magic eyes seem to magnetize every part of me. I'm yours, my heart and I insist, for we don't want to resist. Irresistible you. For we don't want to resist. Irresistible
No, but I'm thinking Nicole does. Oh my God, one of 32 items? That's ridiculous.
When I was a kid, about 3:30, my daddy said, son, come here to me. Says things may come and things may go, but this is one thing you ought to know.
Take what you do.
It's the way hot you do it.
Take what you do.
It's the way hot you do it.
Take what you do.
It's the way hot you do it.
That's what gets results.
Mama, mama.
Take what you do.
It's the time that you do it.
Take what you do.
It's the time that you do it.
Take what you do.
It's the time that you do it.
That's what gets results.
Oh,
You can try hard. Don't mean a thing.
don't mean a thing.
Take it easy.
Greasy.
Then your job will swing. Oh, and take what you do.
It's the place that you do it.
Take what you do.
It's the place that you do it.
Take what you do.
It's the place that you do it.
That's what gets results.
years lesson in history. At the Battle of Bunker Hill, all the men were died until the drum and fife brought men new life. And rhythm saved the world. And in France not long ago, all the boys were feeling low. The drummer man struck up the band. And rhythm saved the world. You find music wherever history's concerned. Nero fiddled while Rome was being born. If the truth you're looking for, you'll find music one wall. The drum fife gave men you life. Drummer bands of the band, trumpet blow be Jericho, and rhythm saved the world.
So am I able to start up? Okay, great. I'd like to convene today's Historic Landmarks Commission meeting. What's today? Today is the 4th of June. And I'd like to open public comment. Seeing no public comments, speaker slips, I will close public comment. Let's move on to our agenda. Any announcements? Ms. Bedard? Am I going? Oh, we'll do minutes first? I'm sorry. I'm a little new at this. Let's do the minutes. Does anybody have any?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment.
Okay.
Page 8. On page 8 of the motion, item number 4, it says the proposed new park entrance. That should be a capital P. That refers to Alice Keck Park.
Okay.
She paid for it. And then down on item 15, and I wish that Phil was here, the removal of oak trees is frowned upon.
Mm-hmm.
Replacement should be characteristic of natural form.
I don't remember.
I remember Phil being a little more specific than that. I think he said that if the oak tree was replaced, it would have to be a native grown or something. He used something to that effect. In other words, it has to come out of the woods. It can't come out of a nursery.
Yes, but I think that's why he did say natural form. I think he meant that it grew naturally in that environment.
Characteristic of an oak tree that is
grown in nature.
Yeah, that is grown in nature.
I think that would be acceptable.
Be more clear.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other?
Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
Yeah, on that same item, page 8, pardon me. Item 4, what park entrance? It's not, it's the entrance off of the library, is it not?
It's the entrance off from the parking structure to the library. It's the one that has the columns and the...
Yes.
That's the Alice Keck Park paid for that. That's why they call it the park entrance.
Ah, so
it's
that's
her name.
Aha.
That's
I remember
it's a capital
Park.
P.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a park entrance. It's,
Right.
it's Miss Park's
Miss
entrance.
Parks. Well, maybe we should say that.
Alice Keck Park entrance.
Well, no, because then people will all visualize going up farther uptown. So the park
And,
donate. How about the new park donate? No, you said it doesn't make it.
It's the park.
It's the location of where it used to be. So yeah,
Well, you can say Alice Park entrance.
no. Why don't we call it the east? I think I like that suggestion. Why don't we just call it the east entrance?
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, because it's no longer going to be right.
Right.
Or do you not want to lose her identification
I
with
don't
that?
think she wants to. The east entrance named after Miss Park.
Okay, I accept that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
On page 3, under discussion item 1, I think that we all appreciated Miss Edmonds' efforts about the sandstone altar rails, and I think that should be inserted as a sentence that we appreciated the efforts of Ms. Edmonds and her team.
Okay, I think is that clear for our note takers?
Item number one of this discussion, Ms. Edmonds kind of headed a team of people who went up through the Riviera and codified those altar rails.
So it would be page 3.
Page 3.
So basically it just said discussion held, so I think...
I just put the commission is grateful for her efforts.
Yeah, which I think that was expressed.
And I think this, on page 9, the Historic Structures Report on San Remo, which has sort of reared its unattractive head through some emails. And I think all of us got those emails, I do believe, from Mr. Gorin.
Yes, who happens to be present.
So I know that there were a misapprehension on the part of some of us, as commissioners, meaning myself certainly, and Commissioner Lavoie, as to when the elevations or if the elevations were ever shown to the commission. I know that they were not when the original structures report was shown. So I think that this is a big gap in information that we needed to have, and I don't know if there's any addressing of it. I think maybe that it's irrevocable, which I find to be unfortunate, because I think that I'm quite positive that the commission would have voted differently if we'd have had those elevations and how they impinge upon the historic structure. So I don't know how to. I guess maybe I'm just using this as a bully pulpit.
Yeah. So I think I'd like to do is, it does affect the minutes, but yeah, thank you, Mr. I was going to invite. That's perfect. Mr. Lamont, please.
I mean, Lamont, Senior Planner. I do want to speak to that matter. There are two issues that can happen when incomplete information is presented as commission or incorrect information, and we discover it. We can request a reconsideration of that motion and that item. One of the responsibilities is to inform you that there was this information that was incorrect, but also your responsibility is to inform staff that you would like to reconsider that motion. I advise that based on the information we presented in our memo, we believe that even if the information was presented, you are limited to the respect of that this action took place several years ago. You accepted this report, and you were just considering an addendum focused on the view corridor issue. Certainly, if you wanted to address the impacts of the one of the homes, because that seemed to be the issue of how close that home was on lot 4, I believe it was in the front.
The front lot, yeah.
You could certainly ask the Planning Commission to consider some issues with respect to setback or height of that structure itself. But we were cautioning you that it was really inappropriate to get into the design of the other homes. However, I think I spoke to this item earlier. You could convey your comments to the Single Family Design Board, because they are currently dealing with that issue of compatibility. As a matter of fact, they met this week and asked for some more changes for the project, concerned about the height. So I think they are aware of your concerns. And certainly the record could be revised in your draft minutes to provide additional comments if you so should desire. And that's where I would recommend you focus on, rather than try to bring up this unfortunate sort of information that was given to you.
All right, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question just in that is, because the minutes reflect the meeting, like if we want to take that up and add additional comments, are we allowed to do that in the minutes as a vehicle, or do we need to do that as a separate?
Reconsider it and put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
I think we could put it back on for that and have that discussion, because I believe there were limited comments at that time. You were more focused on the report. I believe Mr. Winnick made the motion rather than actually make comments on the project. Prior meetings, I think you had more stronger comments about the homes designs and guest parking and other issues. And that's why we responded with the memorandum to you to say your focus is here.
Right.
So we could gladly place it on for your next meeting, and if you want to convey that additional comments, we can.
Well, what I was hoping, my question really was, is if we were able to convey the comments to the Single Family Design Board, which our minutes from prior, our
Sure.
prior meeting had, is there any way just to
We can look
somehow
at the
incorporate?
Sure. We
even
can
in
look
these-
at the prior meetings and actually isolate the comments that were given and share those. Again, they're advisory comments to the other boards, if you like. But we did not do that at this point.
So, I mean, I think that would be a good solution, would be to, in a sense, just with this acceptance of these minutes, maybe just add that comment that the prior comments that were made at the previous meetings be considered and shared with the Single Family Design Board.
Sure, you could direct staff to do that, and we would do that.
And not put it on the agenda.
Not necessarily, because we can do a verbatim transcript of what was said and share that with our Single Family Design Board. Say this is what the commission felt about the homes. Again, it's just advisory.
I see, Mr. DeForest. I don't know if we normally have public comment relative to minutes.
No.
So we don't.
Philip
so-
DeForest.
yet.
Mr.
Not yet.
DeForest, I'm sorry. I
I
just
was
want
at that meeting and I can report. That's what I,
at Single Family Design Board. I don't think we don't want to bring that
Okay,
up.
fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we will follow through with that request.
Would that satisfy your
Well,
concerns?
I would just like to make sure that the commissioners who are not here are represented in those comments. Commissioner Lavoie.
The
particularly.
way we can do that is we can actually have individual comments from each commissioner and
Yeah,
convey that.
Yeah, if it makes it more streamlined.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, actually, Mr. Limon, just before you leave, I just want to figure out what we should craft. So relative to the minutes of that meeting, can we add to it just that the prior minutes will be shared with the Single Family Design Board and that the staff will follow up on this?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. Did our note takers, Ms. Gu, did I have that right? Get that? Okay, great. Thank you. Any
Thank
other?
you. No, that's good.
Thank you, Commissioner Jury.
I'm just going to take the previous comments and forward them.
Anybody else? Do I have anybody that wants to?
I move to accept the minutes as corrected.
Second?
Okay, any discussion? Great. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Thank you. Now we go to announcements, right? Ms. Bedard? Yes, please.
Consent calendar.
Consent calendar. I'm sorry, folks. I am definitely not up to this. Okay. And I don't have it in front of me. Great. You'll share the consent calendar. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Consent agenda for today, Wednesday, June 4th. Item A, 1242 Dover Lane was granted final approval as submitted. Item B, 801 State Street was granted final approval as submitted. Item C, 601 Paseo Nuevo was granted approval with conditions. Item D, 821 State Street was granted approval with conditions. Item E, 705 Laguna Street was granted final approval as submitted. And item F, 1716 Santa Barbara Street was continued indefinitely with comments. And item G, 34 West Victoria Street was granted approval of review after final with a 2-week continuance for one item to resolve the screening for the mechanical equipment. Items reviewed by Commissioner Sharp.
Well, great. Do I have anybody to ratify the consent calendar?
Move.
Commissioner Jury, second by Mayhem. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? And none abstained. Thank you. Now announcements. Yes. Thank you for bearing with me. Ms. Bedard, any announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just that Commissioner Sudi, Arias, Lavoie, and Murray will be absent from today's meeting.
Okay. And
I have one more.
Ms. Hernandez, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We also want to announce that the 3 landmarks that you recommended to be designated by City Council are going to City Council on June 10th, which is this coming Tuesday. The meeting starts at 2 o'clock, and it is the Santa Barbara Club, the Masonic Temple as well as the Unitarian Church. And the Masonic Temple did submit a letter that they withdraw their objections to the designation.
Well done. Very good. That's great to hear. Thank you. Any other announcements? So any subcommittees?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Drury.
No, I need to leave by 7:15 tonight.
I hope to accommodate that. Oh my goodness.
I just want to cover any,
Thank you. Any subcommittee reports? I've got one, just so you all know, Commissioner Sharp and I met with the, I think what we'll call it, the Street Architecture Furniture Committee in order to review some of the projects at Paseo Nuevo and others that would be on State Street to start standardizing the umbrellas and heaters and, the fences that enclose outside dining on sidewalks. I think that was it. Anything to add, Mr. Sharp? That's it? Okay. Great. That's it. Shall we go to our first item? I think we're ready. Anything else? Okay. First item on our agenda. And sorry, we're all running a little late because it took a little time to get quorum with so many commissioners absent. So our first item is zoning ordinance. So.
Hello, sir.
I think I've seen that before. Thank you. Welcome. Hasn't changed, I bet.
Good afternoon, members of the Historic Landmarks Commission. My name is Bea Gallardi, and I'm with the Planning Division. And I'm here with Danny Cotto, who's my supervisor in the Planning Division.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. So we're here. We're excited to tell you about a new effort that the city's taking on. It's an effort that none of us probably in this room have taken on. So the City Council has budgeted and allocated resources to update our zoning ordinance. As you know, the zoning ordinance is Title 28 of the Municipal Code, and it's the rules and regulations that most of us operate out of. So we're at the very beginning stages. We have been allocated monies to hire a consultant to help us with the preparation, given that none of us have really done this before, so we're going to need some help. We're working on the scope of work, and I think some of you were emailed the Planning Commission staff report that included that long working list of the types of issues that we would hope to look at. So the purpose of coming to today is to just give you a little overview about the effort and let you know what's happening, because you'll probably start hearing about it in notices and LDT bulletins and neighborhood groups. So we're calling it the ENZO for New Zoning Ordinance, and although it's not a comprehensive brand new ordinance, it really will be to us. So it is the ENZO, and we are going not only to your board, the ABR and the Single Family Design Board, but we've also been doing outreach to about 12 groups in the community that we feel are frequent users of the zoning ordinance. We've been to the Citizens Planning Association, the AIA, the Board of Realtors, and who was our other group? The Neighborhood Advisory. We'll be meeting with them next week. The Neighborhood Advisory Group that we've gone to. So we have about 8 more groups to go, and we're getting really good feedback. Again, it's just initial feedback. So Danny just passed out this little question and answer sheet about what the effort is and isn't. So I just want to cover a little summary of that, because just as we are excited to take on all these issues that maybe are frustrating or gray or complicated for us over the years, we also want to be real clear on what we think the effort is not. Because if you all followed the general plan update, you know that things can get bigger and bigger and more complicated, and we just won't be able, as a part of this process with the budget and the resources, to take on some certain aspects of the zoning. So the main goal of this effort is to restructure the zoning ordinance. As you know, over time, we've amended the ordinance many times since it's a 1957 ordinance. And although each amendment was very deliberate and appropriate at the time, it gets complicated when you have a project to know what applies and where, as you have to look in various sections of our code. We want to modernize it and make it more current as far as uses and standards and how we operate today as a community. We want to make it clear as far as the decision-making process. When the first ordinance was written, we didn't have admin approvals, we didn't have the show, et cetera. So we want to make it clear when someone starts the process what their process will be from beginning to end. We also want to look at historic interpretations. Those of you that are architects or designers know that you may have a question, and sometimes even the staff people at the counter, it's not real clear, and you have to wait for the interpretation. So we've kept a record of just some historic interpretations, so maybe that's the way we need to amend the ordinance. And we also want to make it responsive to non-conforming situations. Because it is from 1957, and we've had so many amendments over time, many of you know about the big amendment being the 1975 down zone, where we basically took big chunks of neighborhoods and rezoned them. And while at the time it was appropriate to produce less units, and the unintended consequence was that all of those people, their setbacks changed. So now anytime they come into the city, and sometimes to your design review boards, and want to make an addition or expansion, they're stuck with having to move that, get a mod, or step it back 1 or 2 feet. So we want to really look at that and see how we can, and we don't know what the answer is yet. So look at ways of one, responding to those non-conforming or improving or changing standards that make sense. It will be a very public process. Right now we're just starting to tell people about it, telling people to get involved. We've created a website, and it's the city's website /NZO. We are taking all comments through the website and through this little half sheet that I gave you. For people that don't want to do it on the computer or may not have a computer, it could be mailed in or dropped into our counter.
Can we have them turn on the cameras? Oh, great. They just did. Perfect.
So it just gives a little summary of the effort, and then the backside is where you can provide comments. But the website also has an area where you can provide your comments. Also, our noticing list, if any of your coworkers or people want to know about it, there is a place there too where they can get on. We don't have a written neighborhood list. It'll all be through the website, so they can sign up as a registered user and receive all updates. The types of things that we know we definitely need to look at is definitions. We want to look at uses, the yards and setbacks. Again, like I said, the standards for non-conforming properties, allowed encroachments. I know we've heard from some architects that we have this 2-foot allowed encroachment, and then maybe 3 feet is more appropriate, and that type of thing. We also want to look at where and if we can have some additional administrative authority. All of you know about the fences and hedges, and there was a process set up whereas certain things can get administrative approval. Maybe there's other minor things that we look at frequently, and if there's ability to develop more administrative authority. We want to look at accessory structures and garage standards. Right now, we know that our garage standards aren't necessarily consistent with the parking and design guidelines that transportation uses, so we want to look at updating those. I believe transportation will be doing that and making them compatible with our standards. Also, another thing that we hope to take on, but we know that it will be controversial, is looking at parking standards. Particularly, we're interested in some of the commercial zones where we have, like restaurants, a good example, where we have the outdoor seating, the indoor seating, the fast food, looking at maybe if there's a way to standardize it. Again, we hope the consultant will have knowledge on what other communities do. So the council and the planning commission, we've been to the planning commission, and the council knows about, they've initiated the project, but they have formed what's called the ENZO Joint Committee. So it's 3 members of planning commission, 2 members of council, and they're going to be like our advisory body. They're going to be the ones that, as we start to get into the standards, we will first vet them through them, and then we will go out to the broader public and have, as you know, on all our projects, we have the public workshops. And we imagine that all that effort won't start until about January. We hope to have a consultant hired by September, and their first charge will be to review our ordinance, see how it can be restructured, highlight for us, the what they see as the larger needs for fixes. And then in January, we hope to really start with the hands-on work. And that's going to involve your committees too, because as this evolves, and depending what the standards are, it may or may not need to follow up with your boards. But we also hope that you would stay involved just with the effort as we go in public workshops, et cetera. So what I had said that we definitely want to discuss what it's not going to involve. As you all know, any amendment takes a year or two to get through our process. So we've been allocated resources and money to the end of 2016. That's the timing for. So we really hope to have whatever this document is done by the end of 2016. So at this point in time, our zoning ordinance, Title 28, and other communities, it really is just their basic standards. Ours has a lot of programs in it. So the things that we're not going to take on is form-based codes. As you know, through the general plan, it was decided that at this time, form-based codes would not be taken on by the city. We're not going to take on the vacation rental issue. Stormwater management program changes. We recently just adopted 2 big programs, which is the average unit density program and the growth management. We're not going to take that on. Of course, if any things need tweaking for consistency with what we're doing, we would do it, but we're not going to open those programs again. The condo conversion ordinance, open space standards, and there's a long list, but I won't worry with all of them, but like the inclusionary housing ordinance, the TEDR ordinance, building heights, those types of things. And I'm not saying that in the future these types of ordinances can't be taken on, but as a part of this ENZO effort, we're not expecting to do them. How will the community be kept informed? We're going to do our best to let people know through newspapers, LDT bulletins, press releases, the city's website, people that watch Channel 18. And that's basically the information, but really encourage you to get involved. Sign up to the website if you want to go in and review the latest information. And the website does, for the viewing public, the website has information on, you can go and look at the map, see what your zoning is, see what your general plan designation is. There's a good handout in there with what uses are allowed on your property for, business owners to start seeing if this is going to affect them or not. But Johnny Cotto and I are I'm the project manager, and he's overseeing the effort. And we're here to just, if you have any initial hot topics, something that really frustrates you, something that, God, if I could change this ordinance today, this is what I would do, we'd love to hear it, because then we could include it in the scope.
Okay, well, great. Anything else you want to add? Well, thank you for sharing. Does any of our commissioners have any questions?
I do not. Is there public comment? Or does even...
I guess I have to open public comment. Yes, public comment is open. Thank you for the reminder. Seeing no public comment, I'll close public comment. And no questions from our commissioners or from staff?
I have a question.
Okay.
I can't get my thing to work.
Commissioner Mahan. Well, we might be able to reach over and help.
I don't know.
Oh, that's a good solution too.
I think it would be important to tell everybody that eventually, when this goes to the city council, that it'll be at 5.
Yeah. Well, here. I think she's got a great idea.
That the changes to the zoning ordinance take 5 votes of city council. I think that's an important thing for everybody to know. It'd be a supermajority. That's in the charter. The other thing that you mentioned, parking standards. When the parking standards were revised in the 70s, and I was involved in that, we all thought that cars, because of the gas problem with Saudi Arabia, et cetera, everybody thought that cars were going to get smaller, and for a while they did. And consequently, the parking standards were changed, and it affects parking where the angle is maybe from about 65 degrees down. The parking lots get very tight, as you will see if you go up to Trader Joe's or some of the other parking lots where the angle is 60 degrees or less. aisle is very, very tight. In the bigger angles, it doesn't matter too much. Cars did get bigger again afterwards, and gasoline, and they got more efficient, so it wasn't a problem. But I think you need to look at that, and we need to, in these lower angles, we need to put some kind of a little something in there to make those aisles wider. A minimum aisle width would be maybe a good way to approach it. Thank you.
Commissioner Mahan, when you're talking about less than 65, you mean between 0 and 65, or do you mean?
Well, 90 degrees, no problem. 85-degree angle.
Okay, I get it.
About 65 degrees, the aisles start to get tight, and at 60 degrees and below 60 degrees are really tight.
Okay.
Because the equations make the aisle narrower as the angle comes down, and there probably should be a cutoff where no matter how low the angle goes, you still have to keep a minimum aisle.
Thank you, I get that.
Cool. Any other commissioners? Okay.
You got it working.
I guess so.
Thank you.
Oh, now we have public comment. Sure, we'll open public comment. Mr. DeForest.
Yes, I just wanted to be sure that the problem of people modifying or their historic structures, whether they're designated as historic or not, in that are non-conforming, that those historic non-conforming elements can be kept, because in the past sometimes people who have wanted to remodel or do something with a non-conforming structure that wasn't officially designated as a historic structure had problems that they had to remove appendages that had been added through time or were built originally and didn't and now didn't conform or do not conform to the zoning. That is an important item to address.
Okay, thank you. Great. Well, thank you for your presentation. One last thing.
You don't mind just respond to that part?
Sure.
All aspects of the non-conforming issues will be looked at, including that one. I don't know how
historical
it's all going to be. Yeah, all non-conformings are historic, but I think we're talking about the really old ones, right? But yeah, all aspects of non-conforming will be investigated pretty closely, so we can have a process that works for the most number of people and still protect the overall city.
Also, if you guys don't mind, they made a wonderful presentation to us at the AAA chapter meeting. And one of the issues that came up that kept getting brought up, I just want to share it here because it affects historic landmarks, was the issue of when buildings become historic because they're 50 years old, and that there's a rotation now that's happening with our housing stock. And at some point, do we want to take up the issue of what should be considered historic? And should the 50-year be the threshold, or should that change over time? And just so you all know, that was brought up as a discussion item that I don't know if it'll come up in front of this zoning effort, but it's still something we might want to consider. Soon we're going to be calling buildings of the 1970s that might be unremarkable historic structures. So anyway, that just was brought up.
Can I comment
Certainly,
on that?
by all means.
I just wanted to make the comment that the 50-year mark is just the one threshold.
Okay.
That's just the first thing that we do, and that's a national standard and a CEQA standard that we look at. That's sort of the year we look at, and then they have to meet a whole list of criteria as well to ever become a designated historic, and a lot of it has to do with integrity and the architect. And I know one community that did designate a more mid-century modern district because one architect designed every house, every street, the landscape, and the district. So it was significant as a whole with the architect, and everything was still intact. When you come into a lot of areas that it was tract housing, not built by an architect, and not much of the integrity remains, that's the things we would never consider historic. And they addressed that a lot at the California Preservation Conference that I went to a year ago, because it was in Orange County, and they have a lot of that. So the whole conference sort of focused on how we as preservationists are supposed to deal with this new era that's coming our way.
Great, thank you.
I do want to clarify that Any amendments to Chapter 22, the historic landmarks, probably would not be part of,
Okay.
the NPO, the ENZO update. So unless something to make a consistency, like a definition or whatever, but we probably will not. That would have to be like a separate effort.
That's on this other page, the page of the knots. Okay, thank you much. Okay, appreciate it. All right, well, next item on the agenda is item 2. It's an archaeology report for 121 South Voluntario Street. Please, whoever needs to present. Ms. Sherry, it's you. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Dawn Sherry. I'm the architect for the project.
Great.
I just came from a meeting, so I don't even have a copy, but I think I gave you guys 13 copies, so somebody's got it.
I have one right here.
Oh, thanks.
But I think I have the wrong one. Here it is. Okay, well, we'll put, you've got Commissioner Juries, and we'll put this one on camera.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
no application or no presentation is required by the applicant.
Right,
I'm just going to read Dr.
Correct.
Glassow's comments.
That'd be
I'll go ahead
great.
and do that now.
Please do.
Dr. Glassow reviewed the report and concluded that the archaeological investigation supports the report's conclusions and recommendations. The standard condition regarding the discovery of unanticipated archaeological resources shall be reproduced on the plans prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Okay, great. That's great. Do I have a motion? Or public comment? We open opening public comment, seeing no public comment. Bring it back to the commission. Do we have any questions or comments from the commission? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to accept the report.
Second?
Okay, second. So by Drury, second by Sharp. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstained? None? You understand? Motion passes. Thank you.
We have one in our office.
Great, thank you, Ms. Sherry.
Thank you, guys.
Next item on the agenda is another archaeology report, item number 3. It's 205 West Mason Street. And again, Ms. Bedard.
We're early.
That's okay, we do not mind. Mr. Stone, welcome. Well, please introduce yourselves and hello.
Hello, I'm Kathy Fry. I am a planner at the Parks Division.
Okay.
And I was working
Welcome.
with, thank you very much. I'm working with Jill Zachary on the Ambassador Park project, the irrigation installation.
Okay, great. And
Thank you. I'm David Stone, archaeologist who is helping Kathy and Jill achieve their objectives.
great, well, thank you. And again, Ms. Bedard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Glassow reviewed the report and concluded that the archaeological investigation supports the report's conclusions and recommendations. He agrees that the archaeologist and Chumash descendant should monitor the earth moving in light of the possibility of the presence of human remains. And again, archaeological monitoring is required.
Okay, I'll open public comment. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment. Bring the questions back to. I know. Are you feeling
prepared for every eventuality?
Well, we may have some questions for you, commissioners.
Do not have any
It's open to the commission.
No questions.
Okay, I presume no comments, so we would entertain a motion.
I'll move for approval of the report.
Okay, so motion by Sharp, second by Mahan. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstained? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Great. With Mike. Now we're early. We may have to wait 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Okay. Are we allowed to be 5 minutes ahead? Actually, we're okay. Pardon me?
What's the next item?
Item is item 4. You're asking where you are? You're item 5. You're one after.
Because I'll go earlier.
No, you can't go early.
Would you? Yeah. We talked about disturbance.
Item number 4. You guys can get ready. I guess we're allowed to be 5 minutes early, are we not?
Yes, you can.
And you're prepared?
Yes.
Your whole team's here?
And we're all here.
That's fine. I'm going to give these back. These are, yeah.
You guys.
So that way we don't get confused. Thank you. Those are
spent a lot
2
of time on
reports. And this we can throw out. This,
Thing in the backyard.
no, this one doesn't. He didn't speak.
Because my aunt
Did that one get a number 1 on it? Yeah, we
right
just
hand
put
woman.
the date.
plans. She
Oh,
lived
yeah,
back
sure.
here.
Are you talking about Anacapa?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
Was
yeah.
item number 1. Councilor DeForest, thank you.
Great house.
209.
Yeah.
The next one is Chase. Right.
Okay, nobody's speaking. I don't know why he's... Okay, well, welcome. So we've got item number 4, 209 East Islay Street. Please welcome and please introduce yourselves.
Pamela Post, Post Hazeltine Associates.
What's the matter?
Oh, usually I do they can present.
Oh, well, they sat here, so I'm just...
Usually come up, but Nicole usually begins the conversation.
Well, that's fine, but you might as well finish introducing yourself.
Tim Hazeltine, Post Hazeltine Associates.
You're part of this?
I am.
Oh, I didn't remember that. Okay, go for it.
Jarrett Gorin, Vanguard Planning. I'm the planner on this project.
Okay, great. Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a project to remove 6-inch wide section of the sandstone wall for an entry walk to the house, as well as use the sandstone for the front porch of the house, and remove a section of the sandstone wall for a driveway and rebuild it where the current driveway is located. And I'm just going to give you some background. We review several rounds of drafts, and some of the things I looked at so you can see where we've come.
Mm-hmm.
I reviewed it to make sure, I really looked at the original stones would be salvaged and reused, and the mortar composition and tuck pointing matched the original. And although the wall will be relocated with using these original elements, it won't have an impact to the streetscape because you'll still have this stone wall presence. So I also wanted to ensure that if any stones were found unsalvageable after the demolition, that real sandstone replacement stones were used that matched in size, shape, profile, and no artificial stone was used, or stones and mortar that look greatly different from the project. So those were things we looked at previous drafts, and that's what you see in the final report. And I do agree that with the report that the relocation of the portions of the wall do meet the CEQA standards and guidelines, and the streetscape will still have the significant sandstone wall. And I recommend you accept the report.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Would you like to make any presentation or just...
No.
Okay, that's great.
Summary.
That's fine, since you're saying. That's great. We'd like to open public comment. We have one public comment speaker slip. Mr. DeForest, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. Kellum DeForest. The problem here, or as I see it, is that sandstone wall is a significant feature of the streetscape, the historic streetscape of that section, that block of Islay. And by changing the, I guess you would call it fenestration of the wall, changes the spatial relationship that one sees from the street. And I just think the applicant should at least consider how to shifting things around a little so that the old driveway entrance could be retained. I mean, there's no reason why the garage has to be on the east. I don't see any reason why the garage has to be on the east side, and why can't the garage be on the west side? And that would preserve, that approach would preserve the wall as it is, the historic wall as it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring this back to the commission. Do we have questions from the commission, starting with Commissioner Drury, since you seemed like you wanted to?
Yeah, I have a question of the historians. There's no evidence that the wall always was in that position. I mean, that there could have been openings in the 1800s and the 1900s. There's no. I mean, it's not. I hate to say this, set in stone.
So you couldn't resist.
I'm sorry, you're asking, has it been perhaps altered in the past?
Yes.
And I think as we outlined in the letter report and also in the original report, the HSSR, the Phase 1-2, originally the parcel was larger, and it took in the two lots that face Santa Barbara, I'll just restart. Yes, the opening has changed. In 1930, the 2 lots with the Spanish Colonial Revival style houses that face Santa Barbara Street were built. Originally, there was another house on that property owned by the same family that owned this parcel, and there was a driveway there. We're not quite clear if it was probably in that location, but the width of it, we're not sure. And the change would have taken place around maybe 1920 or even before. There was a point in time when the family, brother and sister lived in the house, and the brother got married and built a new house for his wife. And his sister moved into the house on Santa Barbara Street, and the change could have taken place as far back as the teens. We just don't know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Schallenberg.
This is reviewed by single family when it goes to design review?
Correct. That was your question? Okay. Commissioner Sharp.
No question.
Commissioner Mayhem.
I have, it's not a comment, but it's a clarification. And when Mr. DeForest was talking about the east elevation and the west elevation, he was referring to these elevations the way we almost always refer to elevations, not the way these elevations are noted. They're noted incorrectly in terms of the way we do it. For instance, if it faces the ocean, that's a south elevation. So the front of this house, which I think they're referring to as the, I'm not even sure which is the front from these elevations, but it is.
Well, the applicant might be able to help us.
Is this the front elevation here with the porch?
So, and that's facing us. Okay, thank you.
That should be called the south elevation. And the garage elevation, which is called the north elevation, should really be the east elevation. And the west elevation is, I think, really, that's the rear elevation, right? This is the rear elevation, which would be the north elevation. Those should be corrected. You can always keep it clear in your mind if you think about State Street, the west side of State Street and the east side of State Street, even though they run, they're angled off because they laid out the town differently. So that's an important thing. The question that I had was, and I think Mr. Drury asked the same kind of question. Why does the driveway, or why does the garage have to be on the north elevation? Why couldn't this be flipped over? What's the compelling reason to have it the way it is here?
Okay, I can address that. The report actually has, I think, 4 individual paragraphs about why that is. But the basic reason, it's a combination of things, and the first one that drives it is solar access. So right now, the existing house is pushed all the way to the Santa Barbara north side, and therefore the existing house doesn't conform. And to do a house anything beyond a 1-story and get it to conform with solar, you have to get it further away. So what that does is it begins to constrain us on the south side of the lot. And we wanted to have a garage that wasn't visible from the street at all. So we wanted it rotated 90 degrees from the street and incorporated in the footprint of the house. And then that generates a backup requirement outside of the garage, which then we wouldn't have space for on the south side of the lot and complying with the ordinance without completely changing the project. So we have the back-out space located on the northern side, which lets that area double as solar access compliance and back-out area. So that's basically it.
Can I answer your question, Commissioner?
It does. Well, I'll get to comment.
That's fine. I just want to make sure your questions are answered. Commissioner Sharp, any questions?
No.
Okay, I'm going to stop here for a minute. I was handed this by staff to read the minutes into the record from the previous meetings. I'll just do that before we go into comments. So last time the motion was continued 2 weeks for further it was actually 4 weeks ago, for further commission review to allow time for all commissioners to conduct a site visit. The applicant is requested to provide current photographs and the revised elevations and a site plan to be included in the report with the following advisory comments to be forwarded to the Single Family Design Board. The style of the architecture of the new house is too contemporary. the massing is too large, and study retaining the driveway in its current location and locating the garage out of view so that the wall can be retained in its original location. It would be helpful to include better before photographs of the site and proposed renderings of the site to better understand project impacts. So I'll just state that I think that the question of the house, of the garage location being out of view is just answered. We've asked that question. I guess I'd like to, if you guys don't mind, I'll just go down these questions that were listed. Maybe you can answer them too. About the contemporary style of the house and about the massing. Have either of those changed since it was last submitted to us?
Yeah, I can. This actually did go back to Single Family Design Board, and your comments were forwarded to them, and they considered the house. And the biggest changes that they looked at versus what you saw the first time this was here before you continued it, probably the most major change was that the house was moved back on the lot an additional 10 feet. So it's 10 feet beyond the 30-foot setback. And the Single Family Design Board was particularly concerned about size, bulk, and scale, and mass. And they had asked us to prepare a full street elevation of the north side of Islay Street. South side. I've got to do the State Street thing. I've been doing this for 14 years. I still don't get it right.
It's a south elevation.
Okay. So we provided all of that, and Single Family Design Board gave conceptual approval to the house. The house did shrink down a little bit. We did some minor changes to massing, nothing really dramatic, but the biggest changes were to move it much further back on the lot, which they thought had really addressed the scale of it. It also put us in line with all the other houses on that street. There's one house that's actually at 30 feet, and the rest of them are all right around 40. So they considered all of your comments, and they liked the architecture. They didn't find that it was too modern. I think that may be a function of the renderings you looked at in hardline drawings versus what this house is actually going to look like in terms of materials. So they forwarded us on with all positive comments and a unanimous motion. And that's where we were at with Single Family Design Board.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you.
You moved it back. Did you also move it to the west a little bit? It looks generally smaller.
It is slightly smaller. I don't think that we moved the actual location on the lot side to side on the lot. Our focus was to move it back and provide more space between the wall and the street and the house.
Seems much more. Thank you.
Mr. Schallenberg?
Well, can we get back to, in fact, the applicant might be able to help here, the scope of this addendum letter. I mean, this is specifically analyzing first of all, the sandstone wall, but is there something else that we're supposed to be considering?
What we were charged with doing is essentially evaluating the changes to the wall, which is the one resource on the property that's a significant historic resource for the purposes of environmental review. Because the house was really outside the purview of the Landmarks Commission, the design. Because the design was outside of the purview, we didn't go into the usual detail. And also, it's a completely new structure, so it's not an addition to a historic building. And also, the retaining wall is essentially about 39 feet south of the proposed location of the new house. The setback is sufficient to preserve the setting of the wall once the new landscaping is installed.
So the scope is the alterations and the setting.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's our charge.
At some point, there's going to be a motion whether to accept this report. I just wanted to get clear what we were accepting.
Yeah, and it's good that you made that clarification, Commissioner Schallenberg, because really the comments that were forwarded onto Single Family Design Board are they're really advisory in nature. We're not voting on those. It was mainly to make sure that we don't have that same kind of gray area that happened that we talked about earlier in our minutes on that other project. So this way, the Single Family Design Board advisory comments have in fact been reiterated again today. So I think it's really clear we're not voting on those particular issues unless they affect the setting of the neighborhood. Any other questions from the commission? Otherwise, let's go with comments. Commissioner Sharp.
Well, it's a good report, as usual. And our purview, I assume, is not to comment on the architecture.
Correct.
Only the wall.
Right.
And I very much would like to see the driveway stay in the same location it is now. But I understand why. Sorry.
We're challenged today with our microphones.
It's happened at every hearing I've been at lately.
Anyway, it was on, but nevertheless, I find the wall to be, the location of the new driveway to be adequate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mayhem.
Yeah, if you look at figure 7 in the report, I think that's a very good
Let's find the right page.
Picture of the wall. When I went out to see it, I was greatly impressed by the simplicity of the wall and the street. You know, I know that these historic walls take all kinds of configurations, and if you look across the street, there's all kinds of breakups of the walls. This just happens to be a really lucky thing that in my opinion, is significant. It's significant that this wall goes clear up. The other house on the corner has the driveway almost to, what is it? That's Garden Street up there, or Laguna? Yeah, Garden Street. On the other hand, I can understand the complexities of the solar ordinance and why the driveway would have to be up there. I think that of course I can vote for accepting the report, but I would like to send comments to this is going back to the Single Family Design Board.
Yes, it is.
I would like to suggest that this particular design have some of the same characteristics as the house up on the corner, where the sidewalk from the walkway from the sidewalk to the front door is an S curve, if you go and take a look at that. And I think that if you could do, can you get the plan up there on the?
I can.
Yeah, slide it, a little bit further. In other words, it's, even if you break the wall here, I think it would be important, if you break the wall here and then you break it here again, I think that's unfortunate, and it really destroys the beauty and the simplicity of this big long wall as it occurs today. But if the walkway could come in down here where the existing opening is and curve up here like this very romantically, as a house on the corner does, I think that would help to mitigate that problem. And
you're talking, we'll study that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, I think that's actually within our purview, because you're talking about the openings in the wall. So that doesn't just have to be sent to Single Family Design Board.
Well, then I would suggest that this is not the appropriate place to break the wall if we're going to accept this here. It chops it up too much. But if we can come in down here in some aesthetic and appropriate way for the owners of the house, then that would be, I think that would mitigate the changes to the wall.
Okay. We'll continue with comments. Commissioner Jury.
I agree with Commissioner Mayham's comments, and I also want to say I appreciate the report, and I appreciate your moving the house back away from the street. But I like to see as much of the wall left linear as possible.
Commissioner Schallenberg.
Basically agree. I was troubled, though, by, just from the report, how the adjacent properties were not shown in terms of where the other driveway approaches were in relation. That's essentially what's changing, is this relationship of openings. And if you look at the photos, you can see that there's just this little stub of a wall between the two properties, and that's okay if that's just sort of mirroring and happening on the other end. But I really think that this survey was lacking. The report conclusions I don't think would have changed, but I think it would have helped the study of looking in plan view where these adjacent properties, approaches, and openings and walls were, and you would have then been able to sort of study the rhythm of the openings, which leads to the comment about the linear nature. And maybe it was in the previous report, I don't know, but this survey and the new plan doesn't show it at all. So it's really a comment or a bit of a criticism that won't really change. I think I could accept the report. And then in going forward with comments to single family, I would like to see the language of the notations as to how this stone is being replicated or reused to be more stringent than what it says. Now it says stone wall to match existing on site. I want it to be more like reuse stones exactly, or I know that stone breaks when you take it apart and it's going to be difficult, but it's not just matching it. It's reusing and relocating. It's not stone from somewhere else. It's this stone.
Could we reference the recommendations of this report specifically on the plans and include these very recommendations as a note on the plans?
In 532, that's all. Oh, on a small point, on 532 is actually done twice for both the landscaping and the altering of the existing wall. You might want to make that A and B or something, I don't know, but there's two headings with the same designation.
Okay.
But the long and short is I can accept the report, and I don't think it's an adverse impact on the resource.
Okay. Actually, I would like to ask the writers of the report to respond. And again, these are not comments that we have to send to Single Family Design Board, because again, the restoration or salvaging of the wall is within our purview. So I think we just make them as parts of our comments and acceptance of the report. Right. So maybe we can get the right references. Go ahead, Ms. Post.
Yes, I'd just like Pamela Post of Post Hazeltine Associates. I'd just like to note that on page 10.4, in regard to the salvage of the sandstone blocks, so the salvaged sandstone blocks shall be reused on site to infill the gap in the wall for the original driveway at the west end of the retaining wall.
So it's already addressed in the report.
The report's good, but the drawings that are attached to the report aren't consistent.
Okay. So that would be a comment. We'll just ask that the comments reflect the language of that the drawing, the comments on the drawings also, or the language on the drawings reflects the report. Okay. Okay. And maybe we'll also just suggest that the report should also have items A and B clarified on 5.3.2. Any other comments? Okay, so I'll comment on this too. I found it really helpful to go visit the site because I actually do want to bring up the pictures, and I agree with you, Commissioner Schallenberg, about the issue about the rhythm being a major part of their presentation. And actually, if we had seen the streetscape, I might not have had to go visit the site. The rhythm that one finds up there is that there's no other two driveways like this. Usually there's a long expanse, as Commissioner Mahan is saying, there's a long expanse between the breakups of the driveway. This is actually atypical and not consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. Also, looking at the entrance, this one that's on the right, you can tell that the quality of the stonework there is not as good as the one at the left because it was done at a later date. And actually, one of the things I'm hoping is when this project goes forward, it gets properly restored and that in fact, it will be done and crafted better. So I just wanted to comment on the context of the neighborhood. I think actually moving the driveway to the new location is going to help better in the context of what the rhythm looks like in the neighborhood, and that it will restore the entrance here. I also would like to say that I think it was a well addressed report, and I also want to support Commissioner Mahan's comment about perhaps moving the entrance over if hopefully I saw some signaling going on as the applicant in favor of that suggestion.
I'm curious how much you're referring to exactly. How many feet?
Well, I think that would be, we're asking you guys to study that, but we're, yeah.
Here's my, okay, so it's really interesting that the walkway is coming up because it seems like the majority of the comments at the Single Family Design Board meeting were about the walkway, more specific to design. Right now we have a lot of breakups with, a little bit of steps and a run and a little bit of steps. Mm-hmm. And we got a lot of comments on it would be more historic if we were to group the steps together and drop it off and have fewer runs and breakups with steps. So they were talking about the walkway and that. I understand the S-curve concept, and so give us a chance to look at it. I wouldn't want to push it all the way to the edge of the property. I want to provide some relief between us and that driveway that's next to us. But I think we understand what you're saying about preserving as much linear, in a contiguous linear section of wall as possible, and I think we can probably do it and just let us, give it a shot and have single-family design board look at it when we come for preliminary.
Well, so the question I have is how do we get that incorporated into the report?
Can I respond to that?
Yes, please.
Well,
Or one
I
of
wanted
you
to
two.
say on the top of page 10, it actually has a statement that last sentence of the upper paragraph, the final construction plans will include the following historic preservation treatment plan notes, and those are items 1 through 7. So those get appended onto the actual construction sheets, and they're the guide for the contractors as well as the architects to make sure that those are implemented. Also, the city inspector will have those on the plans and be able to verify that those items have been implemented, perhaps with the assistance of the urban historian. But normally when these reports go in at this level where the plans are still conceptual, these notes are not appended to conceptual plans that are part of the review report.
I think we're good there. The question I'm asking you is how would we address in the report the idea of having the long contiguous masonry, which might entail having the pedestrian entrance closer to the, I'm going to say, the west side.
Well, I think if you're just moving it, I think that's something the urban historian would have to answer as far as if it needed to come back, I suppose, with a report, or if that's something that could be handled by staff as being a minor change.
I'll see what she has to say.
Couldn't we report with the condition that the entry be where the current driveway is? The pedestrian
Well, I'm not hearing that that's what the applicant wants to do exactly. So I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way to do this.
I think we are willing to do that. And I'm just saying, give us a little bit of flexibility in where we place it so that we're not trying right now to figure out exactly where it has to go. But we understand the goal and what the concern is and what we're trying to accomplish. So if you accept the report, we can just amend it, and Nicole could check. I think we're all really clear on what you're asking for.
I think we could accept the report with the understanding, with this condition, that the entrance would be closer to where the pedestrian entrance would be closer to where the current entrance is. Do I have a maker of a motion?
Revise the final draft with that condition, and I can let you all know that it came in, and I can send you that.
Okay, great. Do I have anybody that's prepared to make?
May I make a?
Oh. Another comment?
Ooh.
Your last comment.
The idea of that curved walkway, is there any sympathy for having the pedestrian access separated by a couple of sandstone courses and come up next to the driveway in a curve?
What, at the other side?
Where the driveway exists, where the new driveway exists on the plans, not the existing driveway, and have the walkway come up to the front door so that you have this continuous, this linearity between the driveway and the end of the property would be. The idea, I think,
it's consistent.
These are all things you can massage, but the idea, I think, is to just make as contiguous a line of sandstone, historic fabric as possible.
I think we can look at both. My inclination on the second suggestion is it puts a lot of paving next to each other, and I actually sort of like the separation, and I would lean towards increasing it than decreasing it.
Great. Thank you.
I'd like to comment on that. I agree. I agree with Jared. If you get the pedestrian opening there along with the driveway opening, then it's getting so much bigger.
Yeah.
I think that we want to communicate, and what the historic structures report should communicate is that the existing wall is long, continuous, and unbroken. And while we recognize that the solar ordinance and new things they play a part in how the site is designed, we would like to keep the wall as simple as possible and have long stretches. So if the pedestrian entrance, instead of where it's shown on the plan L1, would move to the west of, and you have to play with that where it would be. It keeps this wall here. Then if you'd slide that back up again. No, yeah, there. So the goal is to keep a long stretch of wall here and not to have a break here and a break here and then there's a break here for the neighbor, but try to keep that as long as possible so the pedestrian entrance would come in here like this.
Okay.
And And I think that's something that can be worked out between the single-family design board and the applicant.
Okay.
As long as they recognize that that's our request to them.
Do we have a maker of a motion?
I move to accept the report with comments.
Okay. With conditions, would you like to?
Oh my
try
gosh, the
restating?
conditions to explore the feasibility of along the most contiguous possible retention of the historic fabric of the sandstone wall.
Okay. Can I add to that? With the pedestrian entrance closer to the location of the existing driveway entrance.
Yes. I'll second that motion.
Okay, so by Drury, second.
And I think we want to incorporate also the comments about that that the stone will be reused, that the joints, the mortar. That's all in the historic structures report.
That's all.
Okay,
yeah.
good. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Great.
We're up next.
You're up next. And now we're behind. We were ahead. Okay, item number 5. That was item 5, wasn't it? Wait a second. No, that was 4. Item number 5, and historic structures report. That one belongs to the file. I have to take it back.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And now we're, great, thank you. Do we have, this wasn't continued, right? 2012 Anacapa Street. New item. So again, please, I guess we'll go straight to the historian. You can introduce yourselves later. Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today we're looking at the Pearl Chase House, which is a city landmark. The proposal is to do some minor revisions on the house itself, and including changing a non-operable window to an operable window to match the existing. It also includes demolition of a studio garage and a proposal to construct a new garage with accessory use on the second floor. I do agree with the report that the demolition of the studio, the former garage, will have a negative impact to the city landmark. Staff recommends that the HLC accept the report and that aspect of the report, and the applicant request a modification to retain the studio as part of the project. Staff agrees that changing the window to an operable window will not have a negative impact to the structure, and the demolition of the shed and the construction of the new garage will also not have a negative impact on the resource and meets the CEQA guidelines and standards.
Okay, thank you. We have public comments, so I'll open public comment. Mr. DeForest.
Yes. In the report on page 7, it says that Mrs. Hezekiah Chase was a passenger, and the story I've always heard from childhood and repeated, and I'm sure can be confirmed, that she was not a passenger. She was standing in back of the car in the we would call it a car at that era, automobile, and Mr. Chase backed into her. That's the oft-repeated story, and I'm sure the newspaper account of her death would confirm that. Why would that story have been repeated so often? Secondly, I cannot it's hard to accept the idea that a two-story building, which becomes a garage, conforms to the Secretary of Standards, because it changes the spatial relationship so dramatically. And I question, why can't the existing garage, or what was the site of the original garage, be converted back to a garage and not be a studio, and that would, or an accessory structure, that would keep the spatial relationships that existed in the Chase's day. So please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Okay. I think I'll bring it to the commission to ask. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Also, as part of public comment, we received 3 letters. One letter was in opposition to the project, and that is from Deborah Ragow. And there were 2 letters in support of the project. One is from Catherine Campari, and the other one is from Mindy Wolf. And they've been distributed to the commission members. And that will close public comment and bring it back to the commission to ask questions, starting with Commissioner Schallenberg.
No.
Commissioner Drury. Great. Commissioner Mayhem.
So the question is about this is the guest unit here that's
Let me get to the same page.
You know, A 1.0.
Thank you. I probably have it near me. Okay.
This is the guest unit up here in the corner that is designated to be demolished?
No.
No, I don't see, where is the guest, where is this?
You're correct, that is the guest unit, but that is not what is designated to be demolished. It is this little previous one-car garage.
Where is that? Is that shown on the plans anyplace?
It's in the back corner.
Oh, but it's not shown, I see it.
Proposed to be demolished.
But the report suggests that that's an impact.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a little bit of a procedural complication here, but I think it's appropriate to let you guys know what our actual plans are with that. So basically, our project originally included demolition of that garage structure. This is before we ever submitted it into the city, and the first people we talked to were Post Hazeltine to do this report. And when they completed the report and said that demolition of the structure would be a significant impact potentially, we've modified our project description that we're actually submitting to the city, which you'll be looking at next, to retain that structure. So this report is based on the demolition of that structure and finds that that would be significant, and then also recommends that we keep it, and then we have subsequently decided to keep it. Okay. And you'll be looking at that next. Is that
okay?
Okay, so I'm not quite sure what today's action should be, but well, I mean, I think this will be comments, right? Okay. That answers your question, Mr.
It does.
Commissioner Mayhem, Commissioner Sharp?
Yes.
No questions. Only my question is normally we'd be, it does say comments only, okay, because you still have to do environmental assessment. Okay, well then great. Let's go to comments. We'll start with Commissioner Sharp.
I'm glad they are planning to keep the rear project building. I have a concern about the height of the windows in the office or study over the garage doors. Generally, the house has shingles over the top of the window except for a couple of the southeast, a couple of the...
I'm sorry, Commissioner Sharp, are we jumping ahead? Because this is on the agenda twice. Are we doing design review?
Yeah, that's coming up next.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to...
This is just the report.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Because we can actually, just so you know, the historic report we can action on. Okay, the problem is I'm hearing that it's not exactly accurate, so maybe we could...
I could clarify that.
Yeah.
The historic report is exactly accurate. It's accurate as to the project that we presented to the historians to review in their report, and that project included demolition of that studio. So this report's accurate as to that project. And then the next project that comes up on your agenda you will see is slightly different than that project and incorporates the recommendations.
So in fact, we can accept the report where the report is saying it does not recommend the demolition of that building.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. It took me a little while to get there. I had a question, I just didn't know I had a question. Okay, so I'm good with that. Comments on the other side of the table, Commissioner Schallenberg, Commissioner Jury. Okay, well, it seems to me that we could go ahead and approve this report. Do I have somebody who could make that motion for us?
So moved.
Thank you. So Commissioner Schallenberg made the motion, seconded by Drury. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Okay, now we have before us another project, 2012 Anacapa Street, item number 6. And we may have some people sitting here in a minute.
Sounds familiar.
Come on in and present the project. And here, can you pass this? I'm sorry, did I skip you? You're good. Oh, yes, you can, by all means. I'm going to just hand this back.
I'm Suzanne Riegel. I'm the case planner for the project here at 2012 Anacapa Street. The project will require at least 3 modifications, and I wanted to go over what those modifications are.
Please do.
The applicant is requesting a lot area modification. The existing lot is zoned single-family residential. There are 2 legal units on the lot, which makes it nonconforming to density. The nonconforming, the ordinance states that when you're nonconforming to density, you may not add floor area to any main or accessory building except for garages and carports, or increase the amount of habitable space. So they're asking for this modification to allow them to build the additional square footage and convert the as-built studio from garage to studio use.
So this will be going to Planning Commission for that?
It'll be going to the staff hearing officer.
Oh, staff hearing officer.
The second request is an interior setback modification to allow that conversion from garage to studio to occur within the required 10-foot interior setback at the rear of the property. And then the applicant is requesting a modification to allow the detached accessory building to exceed the cumulative total of square footage to exceed 500 square feet, the combined floor area of the as-built studio and the proposed accessory space above the new garage exceeds that by approximately 200 square feet. So we're looking at about 701 square feet. At the time of the zoning information report that was done in 2013, it was determined that the lot had 3 parking spaces, including 1 covered and 2 uncovered parking spaces. The proposal that I last saw did show 2 covered spaces and 1 uncovered space. If 3 spaces are not able to be provided, a parking modification would be required. So I wanted to let you know what the mods were.
Thank you. It's very involved. Okay. So welcome. You have nothing else to add, right? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Please introduce yourselves and present the project.
Well, I'm Michelle McToldridge. I'm the architect for the project, and with me is Ethan Reese. He is one of the homeowners.
Jared Gorin.
Great.
I'm the planner.
Okay, well, welcome. Thank you.
Michelle, can I just make a brief statement to start off with? So all of those modifications that Suzanne manages to keep straight, those are pretty much all triggered by our decision to retain the studio former garage structure. And also, I think now is a good time to talk about Mr. DeForest asked why couldn't that just be used as a garage again. And the reason it can't be used as a garage again is that, is there a way to zoom out on that so it shows?
CCTV, please zoom out. Oh, we can also.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, thank you.
So this garage used to be accessed from an alley that used to exist back here and no longer exists. Also, this portion of our lot and this portion of our lot used to be 2 separate lots and were subsequently combined together to make a larger lot, which is actually just over 16,000 square feet. So that's why it can't be a garage anymore. There's really no way to get to it other than obliterating half this lot with pavement, which we don't want to do. So that's the point of the new garage and some accessory space on top of it.
Okay, Thank you.
So I'll let Michelle.
Yeah, please make your presentation.
So what we are proposing is a two-car garage with an office space above, accessory space. It sits, and I think the best.
Michelle, yeah, you have your mic on.
Best way to take a look at what we're proposing is the elevations. The whole intent was to have somewhat of a carriage house look, a simple two-story,
3.0.
more utilitarian structure that was subordinate and as far possible from the house as we could make happen on this lot. It does predominantly sit in the strip of land that was later added to this lot, so that's one thing to note. We've kept the plate heights down as far as we reasonably could at 7.9 even on the upper story there. And you know, although this is a flat elevation, there's some renderings we have as well, which we'll show in a moment, that shows that it's set far back behind the kind of elegant two-story prominence of the house itself. It's just really a basic square garage. So we're repeating similar language of the house itself without a lot of ins and outs, and let's see, garage plans are
So
here.
2.0.
And this plan helps represent its relationship to the house itself. Now, the house currently has a fence that is a pretty hefty structural piece of fence that continues all the way across the front of the property, from the corner of the house onto the property line. And this garage kind of intersects that, but maintains much of it on either side, including like the gate that is there now. And access to the garage then is, there's a pedestrian door in the back, and then we've created a stair that is up the back, you know, out of view from the street or any of the neighboring properties that accesses this office space above. It's been, it's more compact in its size, partly to bring the roof heights down. This helps us comply with solar ordinance requirements and just bring the structure further lower. The house itself has the kind of a unique way of having the eaves where it kind of sits on top of the plates like a hat, so you don't get any reduction in height, and it also has a pretty high crawl space. So the house itself is really quite tall, so even with the 2 stories here, it's much more subordinate. But I think I'll leave it at that. I'm sure there's questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have public comment, so open public comment. Mr. DeForest?
Yes. I would like a further explanation. I didn't quite understand what happened to the alley or street, I think it was called Green Lane, that was separated. I think it went all the way through on that from, no, I don't have the plans here, from all the way north to the next street up. And it would be nice, and I don't know whether, if it could be worked out that the building that's now a studio could be a garage, could it have a second story? That would be interesting to explore. I think now we're getting too many buildings on this lot. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. And since I'm going to make the same announcement before, because I think these letters of support of the project and one not in support were really probably for this item number, not the prior one with the historic structures report. So again, we have 2 letters in support of the project, one by Mindy Wolf and Graham Lyons together, another by Catherine Compere, and then one that was opposed to the project by Deborah Ragau. And that, again, these were distributed among the commission members. And that closes public comment. I would like to ask Mr. Gorin if you could just answer a little bit the question that Mr. DeForest asked. I am curious, what did happen to that alley, just so we all know?
I'm not sure I know. All I know is that
the historians do.
Tim will know.
Tim Hazelton, please come on up. Thank you.
Tim Hazeltine, Post Hazeltine Associates. Originally, it was a much larger parcel that actually wrapped around to the other side over here. Green Lane is now separated from this parcel by another parcel because the original large Chase property was subdivided. So there's no access now from the rear of the property directly onto that Green Lane.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Go over that again, please. I didn't quite follow.
Oh, there's a vicinity map. Okay, go ahead.
There's a gap between Green Lane and where the actual property boundaries are, so there's something in between.
But there's no way to...
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that satisfies us for now. Guys can have a side conversation later. Let's bring it to the commission to ask questions.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, Mr. Drury.
I'd just like to share some ancient story.
By all means.
I spent a lot of time on that property. My aunt was Patricia Mountfort, and she was Pearl Chase's right-hand woman. So when you look at that photograph, there was no fence that ran along the back of the house. It was a driveway that ran up, and the whole thing opened up into a huge backyard. It was gravel. And my aunt's house was that little house on the corner, in this what would be the northeast corner. And as I recall, there was the garage existed. I don't recall any throughway. This is just so that it's clear that there's been a great deal of modification to this property by that fence, as attractive as it may be. In my opinion, it always took away from the standalone magnificence of that house as it sat. And that's just a little historical addendum.
Cool. Well, thank you. By the way, since you just placed, the applicant just placed a rendering on the table, so maybe I'll reopen your presentation. Yes.
Because it does help to see, and over in about 30% shading is a photograph that you would actually see coming down the street. And that photo also helps show that where the garage is proposed, it uses the existing driveway, but it's so obscured by the trees and the landscaping and how it's set back that we see here how all these trees really do cover that view of it. So it's really the best and ideal location for a garage, a house that currently doesn't have a garage at all. So
thank you. Bring it back to the commission. Any questions, Commissioner Drury, to go with your
my historical? No, I do not.
Commissioner Schallenberg.
Did you have any examples of the L shape of this floor plan, the footprint of this little carriage design?
No, I mean the base is the square, and the reason we carved out of the upper story was actually just to bring roof heights down. I mean, if it was that full square, it would just get taller and taller, and since that cutout is in the back, it seemed like an appropriate place to kind of come away with some of the height and some of the floor area.
That ended up being 18 feet, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, the narrow portion.
And transportation's okay with that, Deb? Suzanne? Transportation's okay with the depth?
No, that's the upper
16?
floor. Downstairs is still 24 by 20.
Oh,
Yeah.
it carries over the stair. Okay.
Downstairs is
Okay.
So we have a terrace.
24 by 22 or 23.
That's right, the terrace is there. Okay.
Okay, can I move on? Commissioner Drury? I'm sorry, Commissioner Mayhem?
The question, I'm looking at the elevation here on page 3.0, of the garage, and I'm seeing the 9-foot plate height. Are these garage doors 8 foot high?
Yes, they are.
I guess the question is, why are they 8 foot high instead of 7 foot high?
Well, in a sense, we're trying to achieve some verticality here without actually making the building itself taller. And it just, just for normal vehicle use these days, a taller garage door is much more functional. So I think we are, it seemed to work. When I lowered them, they looked squatty. And this seems to work aesthetically as well.
That was my question.
Okay, Mr. Sharp.
No question.
Okay, well, I actually do have a question that's a little bit prompted by Mr. DeForce. The question I have
I will.
is,
That'll be a comment.
since you guys had to change your thinking and keeping one of the buildings on site, does that not perhaps alleviate the need to build 2 stories for the garage? That the office function, like, had you considered trying the office function at the back of what used to be the garage, now that you're proposing keeping that building? Has that been considered?
I think Ethan may be the best person. He's the owner, and I think my thoughts on that are that structure. It's a very old structure. It's not designed to modern standards of insulation for noise or temperature or anything like that. He is gonna this accessory space is for him to work out of. It's not for some he's gonna be in there a lot, and he wanted a new space to work out of. And doing this avoids the need to go and modify that other building back there. But I think, Ethan, you want to chime in on why you wanted the new accessory space?
The main reason we're keeping it is because I'm told it's historic. I don't want it, that's why I'm keeping it.
It's a pretty funky building. It's got some concrete poured in it.
It should be.
It's really, I mean, if you were to make office space there, you're essentially rebuilding to make it a workable space that meets code today.
Point out the structure on.
It's this
Construction-wise,
Yeah.
it would end up being new anyways, so it really kind of defeats the purpose of saving its historicness.
All right. You answered my question. Thank you.
May I ask a question?
One more question, by all means, but only if you're willing to do comments right after.
I will.
Okay. You get the lead.
In fact,
off.
I'll even give another history lesson. But is there any thought? It seems. Let me make this a comment. No, I make this a question.
You're allowed a question.
How far away is the proposed garage from the main building?
It's like 13 and a half feet.
13 foot 3.5, in fact.
Has there been any thought to moving it back at all, away from the street?
I can answer that question. There has been thought to that. The reason we're not moving it back is we have a spectacular jacaranda tree that sits right behind this. And so the location of this structure is dictated. The way we started our site plan was we have a setback on one side we have to honor, and then this tree that we want to preserve and not affect at all. And so that set the 2 back corners of the garage.
Is this it by any chance?
Well, yeah, even in the roof plan,
Or
we
is that enough?
really studied how those branches would function and be adjacent to the terrace above, so.
Oops.
Am I supposed to
That's
go
fine.
to comment?
If you'd like to.
Yes, I'd like to see that batch of photographs that
Which
show
one?
the
This one?
neighboring houses.
Right here.
This won't take very long.
Okay, go ahead.
Because if I don't say it, then and I pass away, then nobody will know. So Miss Chase, who's of course revered, walked me down the street after tea one day to look at this house from across the street, and that's
next door to us.
head in the chimney. She said, "Do you know who that is?" And I said,
really
"No."
zoom in.
She said that was the owner of the house, who was such a horrible man that when the contractor was asked to put a gargoyle-like, he made a copy of the man's face, and the man never knew it happened. I mean, there it sits. So every time you go down that street and get to Mission, you can look up and see what the original owner looked like.
What if one could get
He came out and criticized the mason.
Yeah.
He came out and he criticized the mason doing the chimney, and that's why the mason put his face up there.
That's great.
That's great. Okay.
Okay, so comments.
Yes, comments. Come back to the project.
I do think that the as proposed, that the garage takes a good bit away from the elevation of the main house in terms of its impact. It's a big structure, even though the plate heights are lowered. I know that there's a jacaranda tree. I would love to see that garage minimized somehow, and I think the only way to do it possibly would be to step it back from the street so that it becomes less connected to the Pearl Chase residents. I think it affects a historic resource in and not in a good way. If it can be it would be maybe instructive if we could see. I mean, this is somewhat instructive, but if we could see that structure superimposed or hidden by the existing foliage, that might mitigate.
I think you may actually be looking at that right now. I mean, that structure is going to look an awful lot like that when it comes back in.
I do want to comment on that. So once you accept a structures report that says a garage that you just did, that garage will not have a negative impact on the structure, you just accepted that, and now you're saying that it will. So see, that is what gets confusing down the road.
We hadn't seen this.
You hadn't seen it. Okay, so that might be.
I don't want to get into another San Remo project either.
I know, but that's what that's part of what happens is we want to make, when they said that there were plans in the structures report, and now we kind of just need to look at that design and not to comment on the impact to the resource.
Okay, so then because this is having
it's that chicken and the egg
these
thing.
horrible reverberations in my brain for the last 2 weeks, I think that being the case, that we need to see this kind of information with a historic structures report, because it's rather compelling.
I think those renderings are. I think those renderings are in the historic structures report.
I think the elevation is. I don't think the rendering is.
No.
The rendering was
So
not.
anyway,
Yes,
that
and
would
those
be my
are
comment.
We can
for better or
request
for worse.
those as we move forward in the future.
Mr.
For
Chair.
reports, you can request all the information you need.
With all due respect, it's perfectly within design review to comment on size, bulk, and scale.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. Just not the negative impact.
Right. So what we're saying is we can't use the argument that it doesn't comply with the historic structures report.
Right.
But we could still find that it's not compatible with the architecture of the building for size, bulk, and scale.
Exactly.
That's the
There you go.
clarification.
I just
Great.
want to make sure.
Thank you.
That way it's
Commissioner
clear
Schallenberg.
for the record when we look at the tapes in the future, which we do a lot.
Commissioner Mayhem.
Yeah, thank you. Well, along those lines, I will certainly support the garage where it's located. I can understand why it's located where it is, and the footprint of it I think is acceptable. I believe that the size, bulk, and scale is too big, and I think it has to do with tweaking the architecture would bring it down. I think that's the problem. I think that the garage doors on the front are too big. I don't think you need a 9-foot plate for a garage. I mean, an 8-foot plate will let you, a rolling door go up into the ceiling, and these are swinging doors, so you don't have a problem with that. So I think it could come down a foot there. I appreciate the low plate height on the second story. I think the architect was recognizing that it needed to be smaller, and that would help. If you look at the southeast garage elevation, well, first of all, look at the big house. Look at the elevations of the big
Let's
house.
go to that page. Is that 3.0?
Yeah, A 3.0.
Okay, thank you.
And you see how this kind of Edwardian architecture, if that's what it is broken up, because these are big buildings, and they wanted the size, bulk, and scale to be mitigated. So they had between the first floor and the second floor, they had a whatever you call that board that goes around there, and they went from shingles to clapboard siding, all kinds of tricks to reduce the scale of the building. I believe that if you look at the southeast elevation of the garage, and assuming that plate was from 9 feet down to 8 feet, and then this board this board right here, if this thing here that's on the porch, if that ran around here, a horizontal line is always going to help to reduce the height of something as opposed to vertical things. I think that would help. I think that these windows that go right up to the fascia board, not typical of this kind of architecture, as you can see when you look at the existing house. And if those came down, they maybe are a little bit too big. They need to be in scale. I think the size, bulk, and scale of this garage can work if it's just massaged a little bit. The architecture just isn't there yet, but it's coming along.
Okay.
And those are my comments.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner Mayhem. Commissioner Sharp.
I agree with what Bill has said. The garage needs to be massaged. I think that belly board that runs around should continue. Possibly the second floor cantilever out a little on maybe a portion of it where the windows are. I think the windows are too large. As I stated earlier, they should not go up to the edge of the overhang as they do.
Right.
But I think going to an 8-foot plate height, keeping the 7'9" plate height, I think it can work in that location.
Okay. Commissioner Schallender, did you have?
Well, the reason I think there is some information that's missing, I think to the applicant's benefit, actually, and they're showing the garage at 205.5 and the driveway is at 204.4, so you're having a slab entire foot above that driveway. I think you gain a foot just by lowering that and reflecting that in your elevations. And then there's also some information. I don't know what the floor thickness is, so we don't really know how high. I don't see a dimension from upper floor to slab. So that's sort of an unknown quantity, and the 7'9" works fine. But I think as far as mass, bulk, and scale, the issue is that it's a 24 by 24 box, and I'm not used to seeing carriage houses not have some more rectangular form to them than that. A garage doesn't need to be 24 feet deep. It's only what was trying to be the upstairs is driving this dimension and this footprint, not the garage itself. So maybe some of that can be played with the cantilevering to sort of reduce that and create some variation. You looking in the floor plan, there's even a jog for a powder room with sort of an unnecessary inside corner there that's pushing that dimension back and adding mass to the structure. A powder room doesn't need to be 6 feet deep to obtain that
I'm sorry,
function.
I didn't follow that one. Can you?
Just look at the powder room.
This space here.
There's that rectangle that's unnecessary to the floor plan. So what I'm saying is it looks like there's some massaging is the word that was used is correct. I think that massaging this to reduce the footprint even and reduce the heights can be achieved pretty easily with some minor tweaks. And then as far as the facades, I think one of the things that's troubling about the main garage facade is the three mullion window here is, I think, way out of scale to the this building's supposed to be subservient to the main building, and if you look at the main building, that size window doesn't occur anywhere, and it might even be better served with smaller and two windows further apart to create more siding space between. I mean, that's just the rhythm of the house. If you look adjacent, there's more siding between windows than this large space. And to that point, to the rear of the structure as well, that's a really large patio doors here with a lot of glass and kind of a weak little bit of siding between where the building turns. So I think that should be reduced to get back into scale of the proportions of the fenestration for this house and this keeping in rhythm so that it doesn't sort of overpower. But I mean, it's really nice. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be appropriate for this historic site. I think this type of carriage house is the word that's used, is completely appropriate for the neighborhood and will be very nice, just with some massaging.
Okay, thanks. we're not in questions any longer, so I think we're good. Well, you guys were prepping. I don't think there's reason for more discussion unless there's something absolutely burning. I agree with the comments that I've heard. I also was concerned about the scale of the garage, that it be subservient to the main structure, and I think with the comments that we've heard that perhaps it can be. I think that's very important. The other thing I would say, and we don't have our landscape architect sitting here today, but when you come back after you've gone through the show and everywhere else, please do bring back a full landscape design plan as part of it. I think basically we just have to give a summary of comments, correct? Because there's no action that we can take today.
That's correct, unless you were ready to forward this on to the staff hearing officer.
For the modification.
For the
For
modification.
the 3 modifications.
Would it come back to us?
It would come back to us. Yeah. What's the pleasure of the commission? Do we have?
Would you like me to read them again?
Yeah, why don't you read? That was complicated.
Yes, it is detailed. So the first modification that is requested is a lot area modification because the property is not conforming to density with 2 units, and they're adding new square footage. The second modification is an interior setback modification to allow the as-built conversion of the one-car garage to the studio. The third modification is a modification to allow the cumulative total of detached accessory buildings to exceed 500 square feet, and currently, as proposed, it's about 200 square feet over that requirement. And then if you're not comfortable with the uncovered parking space, or transportation has issue with the uncovered parking space, they would need a parking mod to reduce the required parking.
Okay. Well, there was nothing presented on that or a landscape plan.
We have the space on this plan.
It's on that site plan.
Oh, do you have the space?
Landscapes proposed.
Yeah, the space is shown, the uncovered space.
Okay.
The dash box.
Okay, I missed it, but okay. Got it. Okay.
Excuse me, question. So there's not a mod for the uncovered space? It's out of the front yard?
It's in the remaining front yard, and the question is it adequately screened for you?
That's okay.
Okay.
I'm prepared to make
A motion?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I'd-
No, go ahead.
I'd make a motion to continue this to the staff hearing officer for review of these modifications, which we've just heard, and I think the commission could send their comment along that we don't have a problem with the modifications as presented. Pardon me? Yeah, they're aesthetically appropriate.
Yeah. You have to bring in the cheat sheet.
Great.
Right there.
Right there. The modification is aesthetically appropriate. Consistent issues with the following. No, they think that's it. The yard, lot, and floor area modifications. I don't think we need that one 9. I just need number 8, right?
Number 9 is about the lot area mod. Is it?
Okay, so the yard, lot, or floor area modification is appropriate to this neighborhood, and it would be acceptable to the commission. And with my motion, I would then say that it should return to us for a further review of the size, bulk, and scale of the garage, as was commented on today.
Would it help if we added some of those comments?
If you have them written down, you can add them too.
If
I can't
can
remember
add
them all. Yeah.
And then maybe you could just say you're okay with it. So the comments, one was about potentially moving the garage back so it'd be less visible from the street, show how much of the building would be hidden relative to the existing landscape. The size, bulk, and scale could be addressed by changing the plate height, by lowering the plate height to 8 foot at the lower level, lowering the garage doors to 7'0".
Lowering the garage slab.
Lowering the garage slab, which seems to be a foot above the grade outside of it. Potentially having I thought you called it a belly course. I thought it was a water table. The water table line, the horizontal line. That's
I'd like to find out what that's called.
Between the first and second
Some kind
stories.
of a board.
Okay, the board, the architectural feature that is a horizontal board between the second and first floor to emulate that on the garage, to perhaps cantilever portions of the second floor of the garage, to look at the scale of the windows, to have more wall surface in between, not to have the windows come to the eave line of the roof. In fact, to keep them so that it's apparent that the garage building is subservient in scale to the main residence. Also to look at the size of the powder room, that perhaps the program could allow the building to be a little bit more efficient, that maybe the garage level could be slightly smaller than the second level. And I think that's, and also look at the windows at the back. They look rather modern in comparison to the rest of the building, that they change the scale, the French doors.
Yes, I'll accept those into my motion.
Do we have a seconder? Second by Sharp. All in favor? Discussion? We're good? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't we need a cookie break?
I guess we'll have to look at what time we are, but we could. Thank you. And you understand the motion
I do.
we've got?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So, is this yours?
That stays here, yes. Thank you.
Need a weapon?
Hopefully not.
Where is it?
Do we need to take a break? I'm hearing that. What time is it? Are we on schedule? Pardon me?
20 minutes late.
We're 20 behind? If we could keep going, I'd like to. I don't smoke cigarettes, so I'd keep going. Can we keep going?
Get a cookie?
Yeah, go ahead. Grab a cookie. The next item, let's see if I've got this right. Item number 7, are we there?
Yeah.
Thank you. Item number 7 is owned by the County of Santa Barbara. It's the Santa Barbara Museum, 1130 State Street. Come on up. I'm just going to hand these back to you before they get lost. Way too many things. I don't know if you need, here we go. Here's the public comments, and here's the letters. I don't know if you need them.
Probably don't need all 4 today since the commission's so small.
Oh, we'll use 3. How's that sound?
We'll use the 3.
Hey, Bob. Unless, once their own drawing, they're welcome to it. You want a 4th one? Come on, let's live it up. If you've got it, he'll take it.
Got him. You almost get one of your own.
Thank you. Wow. Trevor Morrison. Do we need to read anything from before? Or are we good? Do we need previous minutes? Pardon me?
Mr. Chair, I would recommend reading the previous minutes.
You would?
Yes.
That would be great, but I don't have them in front of me, so if somebody has them, I'll take them. Thank you. Oh, that's just garbage. Thanks. Okay. We'll convene. We almost took a break. That's true.
God, no, that's right.
I'm sorry?
This will be your break.
I'm trying to get myself back here. Okay. So we'll read the minutes. So it's 1130 State Street. I'm just going to read the minutes from before, and then I'll give it to you to present. So it was continued with 2 weeks with the following comments. On turning radius exhibit AO 3.1, show the curve cuts and traffic lines and show better engineering that is accurate of the radii. Study the perceived importance of the employee entrance. It seems to compete with the public entrance. Simplification is much needed and appreciated. Number 3, unification of the proposed additions is very important and should respect the historic structure. Additions should enhance the historic fabric. The proposed new park entrance is inappropriate. The glass box needs to be more traditional. Look to the Biltmore for an example. The art receiving facility doors are not acceptable. The design should have all the doors and gates look as such rather than imitating stucco walls. The proposed bronze doors at the art receiving area should not be expressed with more importance than the other doors. Look to the Libero Theater loading door as an example. Restudy the art elevator tower as it is problematic. Simplify the walls around the loading area. Restudy the canted sills on the top floor of the east elevation to be more compatible with the style found within El Pueblo Viejo Landmark District. Provide more continuity and compatibility by echoing the form of the existing site walls. Maximize the landscape on the east elevation as it is of great importance. We're almost there. We've got 5 more. The trellis structure is out of character with the monumental building. Show existing and proposed design elements on the same page. Use screened or dashed lines for existing elements. Restudy the rooftop pavilion. A tile roof may not be necessary. The removal of oak trees is frowned upon. Replacement should be characteristic of a naturally formed tree that would be grown in the natural landscape, not just a boxed tree. Suggestion was discussed to provide several concept rendering options rather than comprehensive plans. The motion was made by Mayhem, supported by Winnick, a second, and all in favor. It was 8 people. Motion carried. Thank you. So do you have anything to present, staff? Okay, great. So please welcome, please present introduce yourselves and make your presentation.
I'm Bob Kupiak of Kupiak Architects, architect for the museum.
Trish Allen with Suzanne Ellich, planning and printing.
I'm Larry Feinberg, the ICOLTS director of the museum.
Great. Welcome.
Well, in the theme of dancing as fast as we can, and the last 2 weeks have been a rather busy 2 weeks, and I
Okay.
think we've made an effort to try to incorporate many of the comments that were made at the last hearing.
Yeah. And CCT, could you zoom out a little, please, so we see the whole plan? It's a large plan.
There we go.
That's better. Maybe a little bit more so we can see State Street.
I know Trish will keep me honest to make sure that I go over each one of the subject matter that were
that's great.
discussed, but we may be a little bit out of that sequence. But one of the comments that got made about kind of unifying the building and also tying things in a more cohesive way than some of the issues that I think may have been a bit more disparate in terms of their style. I start with the site plan because I think one of the proposals that we're going to make within this particular design iteration is to take the Lockwood DeForest landscape and its vocabulary of materials and try to extend it so that it actually becomes the plinth that the building sits on in a continuum all the way through the building, all the way to the rear entrance. I mean, I think there's some coordination issues that we will go through with the library in terms of how they intend to landscape the edge of the building as the Paseo, the rampways to the Paseo work, but I think that, we can either kind of tuck certain things, but you'll see that our notion is to kind of use this material and use the planter all the way across the building and kind of use it in the same vocabulary to encapsulate this outdoor electrical yard that we need to create for Consolidated Edison. And I think that, the idea that this entrance will become more similar in landscape concept and vocabulary to the rest of the building. I think it may be easiest, we'll start with the Parkside elevation. And there are going to be several iterations. I'll just reference back to this drawing, just that we've kind of done this is our existing elevation. This is a more colored elevation suggesting a different pattern for the windows that would be used at the office addition. A rendition of what we think is a more simplified version of the staff entrance, which is really just a kind of dimple in the stucco. And we're going to make several proposals, but we've drawn our favorite proposal for how to treat the rear entrance to the museum, to actually increase the feeling of the masonry mass of the building by making the side walls a little thicker, to actually trim this out with either a cast stone or stone trim in the same profile as is on the front entrance of the building, to give this some sense of detail so that it also relates to the same type of architecture that's on the front of the building. And we've done a couple of iterations to see, just to show you how our studies work.
Okay, thanks, Bill. It's a challenge with the mics.
So we have a couple of different things to look at on this, but one is to create a more classicized entrance to the building, mullioning that glass, creating a kind of vocabulary of stone trim that would exist around that opening, to take the service yard and enclose it with stucco walls that would emulate the existing walls of the building, and actually to create this kind of skirt of the building of planters in the same concrete material that the Lockwood to Forest landscape suggests at the front of the building. So this dual part vocabulary is consistent all the way around the building, and it gives us a couple of little planter areas to actually create some greenery and relief for those walls. We would suggest that the doors to the gates to the service yard be done in a kind of wrought iron, iron vocabulary. And you'll notice this is kind of a mix and match scheme as we flip through the next 4 drawings. This is one iteration of the kind of most simplistic version of the windows that we would propose. If we flip to the next, you see the different kinds of studies that we did. Similar. This is an arched version of that same type of entrance, increasing the masonry mass on the side walls and creating a kind of arched version of the entrance to the building. I think in this instance, we're seeing a window treatment for the upper windows that would be cased in a precast casing, to give the windows a bit more prominence. This will not change. This is, in terms of the kind of expression that we think that is in response to the last set of comments, a more solid wall, a wall that's more of the vocabulary of the walls of the building. I also think that, we've come as a group to think pretty strongly that this one comment that we were kind of happy to embrace is this idea of, how do we actually take the Lockwood to Forest landscape and make it work for us around the building so that the building does have some consistency. Okay. There was some comment about the horizontality of the expression of these windows. So another version that we'll look at that we studied is kind of a more double arched type entrance. In this instance, we're actually taking the window sets that are up above and not fully trimming them, but actually giving them a precast headpiece and creating a pilaster column feature in between the windows so that it's a bit more decorative in its relationship to whatever entrance it kind of pairs up with. And then I think another concept that we have that actually is a possibility regardless of what window treatment we choose. In between the window sets, there's also the potential, like the front facade of the building that has a panelized effect below the cornice line, the idea of just creating this, 1.5 inch recess in the stucco so that there's a kind of dimple in the stucco in between the different window sets. It may be, it's not so hard.
No, we're able to see it.
But that, all in an effort to try to linearize the window treatments that's there. Also, there's the concept of, reinventing that cornice panel in a simplified way and having that kind of belly band be reintroduced in the building, depending upon just how much of a hat we all feel is appropriate to sitting on, the stacked masonry wall. But I do think that this is kind of, there's a comparison between what architectural treatment exists for the entrance and what architectural treatment is most appropriate that pairs with that. I will say that, after much soul searching on our own and museum staff, our favorite entrance is the simplest one, just the rectangular entrance that's somewhat less adorned than the others. I also think that, although the curved arch is kind of an attractive thing, I'm not really sure that that's the most appropriate architectural vocabulary for this building. It just doesn't exist anywhere else, and this building seems to be a much more rectilinear type of composition throughout. These are just, a little bit more in terms of detail of, how the entrances might be treated. I think that the entrance that we're proposing accomplishes much of what we wanted to accomplish in the first place. I think it's a much more open and transparent view into the building. I think that, the mullionization and the kind of hierarchy of a larger and a smaller mullion and how this inset of the fenestration would be created really does kind of bring us back to a much more classicized version of the facade of the building. So in terms of, being somewhere in the middle, I think that this kind of accomplishes the goals that we feel are important to accomplish, and I think it accomplishes the goals of being sympathetic to the existing architecture of the post office building.
Okay. Oh, yeah, more studies.
More studies, you know, I mean, just at a larger scale so that you can kind of get a better look at, you know, the things that we've been looking at.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You know, I included this drawing just to kind of conceptualize, you know, how this green band might work as it wraps around the building. You know, right now this planter bed with the extended Lockwood DeForest scheme that blinds the existing ramp that comes into the building. So I think that by picking this vocabulary up and beginning to dress it using the same types of forms, you know, well, there's another little cutout at that, or little cutouts where an entrance to the building occurs. I mean, this could end here, this could be extended. I know that along the side of the ramp, the library landscape scheme proposes an in-ground planter bed that could easily be, you know, line up with that and make for the planted area that's within this zone. I know there was a comment made about, and I know this is a coordination issue with the library, about how much more landscaping is to occur. I mean, I think you will see that in their presentation. I know there was some issue about framing this wall using the kind of tree structures that were going to be proposed, because I do think that I know that we would love to use this wall for art purposes in the future. I think the library would also want to do that, but you know, at some point when the park is renovated, the idea of actually being able to, you know, do some kind of nighttime projection on that wall would just make us kind of try to make sure that we had enough space in the middle to be able to do that. But that is really a coordination issue between the museum and the library that's kind of ongoing. You know, in terms of what the elevator tower really is, we're going to show you a number of different iterations of how doors and gates into that yard might work. Yeah, these are...
I think we have to rotate.
Yeah, or, you know...
Definitely challenging here. Okay. We'll just take everything off the table. Thanks. Jerry.
So these are two simulations just in terms of when we're in Library Park and the...
Well, let's try to get them both on this, or get one on the screen. Can we start with that one? Or is not?
Just as kind of a reminder, from the August submission to this submission, you know, the size of the elevator was diminished greatly. I mean, the scale of the building, at least its footprint, was made smaller. Also, we had a kind of pyramidal tower on the top of the roof, and that was made to be a flat roof, so that, you know, we've done kind of most of what we can do to pare down the size of what just is the shroud for the elevator. I mean, in the lower version, if we're in Library Park, I mean, that's about the impact of being able to see the art receiving facility over the canopy of the trees. If you're on Anapamu Street walking towards the museum, I mean, as you can see, it's kind of hard to even see this building, other than to look through the trees and see the base and whatever door and walls and fence that we create around it.
Can we go to the next page?
Let's take a page. This is our...
Here, let's do the same thing.
This is a revised elevation of the Anapamu Street side of the building, with the existing elevation shown on the top and the proposed elevation, one iteration of it shown on the bottom, which is really plank doors as the methodology for, you know, articulating the freight elevator and its side lift. We've kind of redesigned that section of the side lift doors to make sure that it appears more like a door in context to the other larger door. I think that we would keep the same vocabulary of the iron gates that were proposed, so that the three sets of gates around the building would be consistent in a kind of minimalistic wrought iron type design that had a blind panel behind it. And I don't think we're really interested in seeing the Marburg back of house that all exists there for both us and the library. So in these two iterations of the renderings, you know, one is just a kind of monochromatic plank door made to appear much more like what exists at the Libero. And there's an existing wrought iron door and some of the wrought iron vocabulary that used to exist on the front of the building, and we think that's the other alternative for creating the doors that would exist at the art receiving facility, to have a small detail in it and vertical wrought iron. And I think that's the end.
Okay, that's your presentation. Great. Maybe we'll just leave it there for the minute. We have public comment, so I'd like to open public comment. We have two speakers. Our first one is Trevor Martinson. You can come on up, please. Maybe, Trish, could you have your seat? Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay, thank you. Here you go. No, you have to be at a microphone, so please introduce yourself.
Chair Winnick, members of the HLC, I'm Trevor Martinson, architect. Concerns that we've had over the past year, and I will pass out some photographs, is the entrance, the rear entrance to La Arcada and, of course, the museum. And I think that there are some very specific issues that we should be concerned about. And in that, you will see the plans that were available to me. I reviewed and saw that they did not accurately depict what was in the southeast corner. And I think it's important that, especially since the historics report did not really show accurate photographs that were clear. And I think that this is one corner that we should study very carefully. And hopefully the commission and the applicant will review these things and perhaps make a few modifications to accommodate it.
Can I just ask, when you're saying the southeast corner, are you specifically referring to this?
Yes.
This image, okay, so we're specifically referring to this area.
Right, that area. And
Okay.
as you can see, there is a very large, and I'll point this out, there's a very large wall that is sort of a common feature, and of course, La Arcada's sign and the memorial to the design architect there. And I think that the concern that we had was, especially when I read through a staff report that says miscellaneous site structure demolition will occur to support implementation of the proposed design. Concern regarding that wall for La Arcada is very, very focused on that.
Okay, well, thank you.
And if there are no questions, I'm going to have to leave. I'm late for a 4 o'clock appointment already.
Well, thank you for staying to
thank you.
speak. Thank you. Bye-bye. And our next speaker is Mr. Callum DeForest. Mr. DeForest. And Trish, you're welcome to have your seat back. Mr. DeForest.
A couple of things I'd like to comment on. One is, and I don't have the material here, aren't they isn't the front of the museum arch the State Street? Yes.
Yeah, that's arch. Correct.
Yes. So my question is, why can't arches be used? I think they would be more historic, and as Mr. Martinson just pointed out, some consideration of Myron Hunt's La Arcada building, and of course you may recall that he did the Faulkner Gallery too, so he envisioned a tie-in, but when he was doing that design, it was the post office, and the museum had not been thought of yet. So, but I would like to see more arched treatment, especially for the, and I was wondering what an arched treatment would be to the elevator on the northwest corner, how that would look. It might tie in with the rest of the museum better than the square ones that exist. I do appreciate the idea that, like, Lac de Forest treatment would extend further around the museum. I don't know whether, I don't think that was a vision when he did his original design. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Okay, we're going to close public comment and bring it back to the commission. That's yours. Starting with Commissioner Sharp. Do you have any questions?
I do not.
Well, that was fast.
Yeah.
Commissioner Mayhem.
Thank you. Do we have a picture of the front of the museum? The elevation?
We do from previously, yeah.
We can refresh our
Here,
memories.
this may
of
work
that.
from the structures report. We can
Oh,
put it in
yeah.
front
There
of
we
it.
go. Let's get that up there.
Sure, by all means.
Okay.
Can CCTV zoom in, please, on the pictures?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you want me to leave it with you first?
Well, no, that's
Okay.
yeah. Thank you. That's my question right for now.
Well, that was an easy question. Commissioner Schallenberg, do you have any questions?
It looks like there was some intent to do a let-in at the head of the door at this entry. Is that what exactly is happening there? It
Let me
seems
get
like-
it on the
Seems like
screen.
that happens on every elevation.
The let-in of the letters?
No, it looked like the door frame itself was looking to cut in. Is that on purpose?
I'm trying to get it in front of us.
And where else does that occur, I guess?
Wait. There. No, that's it.
Yeah,
This
there you
one
go.
is on.
The head of the entry door,
Here.
it looks like the frame extends up into the whatever that stone
This is coming above that.
beam is, whatever it's intended to be.
These would be flush. This is all part of the framing system for...
But didn't you say that there was some type of structural item that where the lettering would be, that some type of structural beam there expressed in stone or concrete or?
In this particular instance, I mean, this band that runs across,
Right.
Well,
it's
you
on.
could imagine it in either stone or as part of the metal system of the frame, but I think in this particular iteration, I would imagine it being part of the framing system.
And then the head of the door is intended to cut into that?
It's really not cutting into it. It's just a reveal that pops up over it. It would become part of the detailing of that particular transom that runs over the door.
Let's go to the next page. How is that different on the next page than what I just looked at?
If I may.
I think this got thinned out and got created in a different way.
It just caught my eye.
Yeah,
It's a
I
small
think I'm
detail,
just
but-
going to offer. I think it was a drafting error on the first page. Honestly, I think it's that
It
simple.
could be, because
I think
this
it's just that
looks
simple.
like it's thicker than it was intended to be.
All right, well, whatever.
I was only curious if it were borrowed from somewhere else on the building from a historic standpoint or something. And then on, I was curious also about the wrapping and continuing the Lockwood to Forest landscape design. And how you determined, I think the best place to look is on page 9, which is your bird's eye view, I believe. Yeah. The question was, how did you determine where to stop or the walls and have them return and engage the site wall beyond? Was there any study that was done on the front of the
It doesn't exist on the
It
front of the
doesn't,
building.
right?
I mean, our gesture here is really to replicate the kind
Right.
of forms that were there in the beginning, and then to create a kind of vocabulary of those two materials, the wall
Right.
and the concrete base to create the planter.
So was there any consideration to following the arch recess there at all on the corner? I mean, just continuing the planter wall below, following.
We did consider that. There was some, and we're not against it.
Okay,
all
right.
It could either follow. You'll see that on one of the other drawings for the rear entrance. We did follow it. There was some desire at some point in different conversations with city staff to allow for kind of easier pedestrian access to turn the corner as everybody was entering the path of the La Arcata. So whether we extend the planter out or don't extend the planter out, I mean, it might be one opportunity to either do that or not. I think that for us, the big picture issue was how do we establish this two material vocabulary and make it work for us in terms of both making it feel like the rest of the building and taking some advantage that when we do wall in and screen the service courtyard, that there's some way to create
some buffer,
a buffer and a relief, and a relief that seems attached to the rest of the building.
Okay, and while we're here, these plank door, the large receiving doors, is there some programming requirement for the width of this opening? What is it?
It's about the size of art crates that come into the building, and that elevator is designed to be able to take those crates off the truck on a forklift.
Okay.
That elevator is designed to both carry the weight of the art coming in and the forklift driving it.
So that's what's driving the width there, and therefore the footprint?
Correct.
Okay, and what was the idea up above that with the splay in the window?
There's a vent for the shaft that's required, but we would make it some form of decorative, a decorative vent.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Drury.
Yeah, I just want to know, continuing with Mr. Martinson's question, what will happen to that wall behind that palm tree?
Behind the palm tree?
Yeah, the one that goes into La Arcata. Is that going to remain as is? So that's
As it stands right now, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
That's not part of this project, basically.
None of this is really part of it.
I guess I should have asked that question so we could have heard that, but okay. That's last your question. Okay, I have a question on that side elevation. I don't have a lot of questions, just this one. Go back to your preferred elevation.
Well, I would just comment, it's our preferred entrance, not necessarily our preferred window treatment for the ribbon up above.
I understood that. I should say your preferred entrance. I'm just kind of curious what the thinking was behind these gates coming higher than, like the wall goes down and then the gates pop up above it.
Just to create a sense of presence that they're there.
I see. Okay. Since you offered that this is your preferred entrance, which of the studies is your preferred for the upper story of this wing? Do you have a preference?
I do have a preference. And actually, you have to imagine what this preference is, because as we've continued to talk about it, it's a hybrid of two of these schemes.
Okay.
We actually prefer the simpler of the window punches to all of the, something that's not adorned with columns or things. However, we are kind of interested in that recessed panel effect.
Which is on like the fourth one.
It's a very subtle gesture.
So you're liking that.
We're liking this.
But not the string course with it.
And this is very much akin to the kind of detail that we think exists to just create a shadow line, not a material change. And I think that this would also help achieve that a little bit more of a horizontal feeling for this rather than just punch, 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 punch of window. The jury's out. We come to you for comment. The banding in the building is something that we've wrestled with back and forth, and we're not really sure which one we like.
Okay. It's just always good for me sitting here to know that if you had a preference and you're spending more time looking at it, thinking about it, is to hear yours too. Great. Thank you. We will go to comments. I think I'll start with Commissioner Sharp, if that's okay.
Comments?
Comments.
If you could put this...
You guys in cahoots? You already knew you wanted that.
out there, which is an older rendition, but we don't have that elevation to show today. It seems to me that the elevator tower, which abruptly ends soon after it engages the building, why you wouldn't want to continue that similar to what is here.
It actually does. This may be an older iteration. I mean, the roof of the tower actually defines its engagement into the building. It's the over travel for the elevator, and we really don't have a whole lot of.
Let me state this a different way.
No,
it's right here. Well, yeah, we do want to
We
go
do
the
drop
other
the
way.
other way.
You want to get back here?
You want to go?
Sorry, I just don't know what we're doing, so otherwise I would.
Knock anybody over with.
We are able to
I'll
drop.
back off. Go ahead.
Go
Oh, you're looking for the aerial?
Yes.
No, the
Okay.
elevation.
No,
No, the aerial might do it. There you go.
I'm talking
See, it
about
stops.
this. Barely engaging the building, which emphasizes the fact that it's an outsider compared to everything else, in lieu of possibly this continuing and the roof engaging it as it does over here. Just
Save some tile, in other words.
yeah, and a water problem, but
It's a big cricket, right? No, it's
major cricket, right? That's one comment. I like the idea of bringing as much of the Lockwood to Forest materials around to provide the plinth, as you mentioned. I'm concerned about the lack of additional landscaping here, but that's another whole issue. But generally, I prefer the rectangular park entrance and the simplest of the fenestration along the library side.
Okay,
That's all.
great. Thank you. And then prefers Commissioner Mayhem.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with those comments, and I really believe if you study this elevation and pull this wall back in there, it will integrate more into the bigger building and will be less obvious. I think that's a good
just
call.
we may be just at an angle point that we can't see, but that wall actually sets back very slightly from this wall and does drive into that building.
I think it should just come right back in daylight. Yeah.
And you're actually bringing it up
like
literally.
that. Yeah, like that. Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's good.
Get it right.
I think that one of the things that this is lacking that will pull it into El Pueblo Viejo is that it doesn't express massiveness enough. For instance, you probably have space requirements and those doors have to be where they are, but if that is the case, I'd prefer seeing this wall come out another foot and have a nice deep return so that you really express the massiveness of these walls as they, this is supposed to be a Mediterranean architecture, which is all, was all stone to begin with, and even though this is a white building and it's not, it needs to express the massiveness more. And I think, once again, citing the Libero Theater really is successful at doing that, expressing the massiveness of things. And the same thing, I think, is true of your study of when you're doing these windows and these little belt courses. I don't know where there was another one there that had those little belt courses around. I think why you're having trouble with these and not being able to decide what's right is because they're not massive enough. They're too delicate and they're too finicky, and they could be simplified, but have more. You know what I'm talking about? More. I want to use the word muscle, but be a more powerful expression. And the same thing is true of if we get to the archway here, or the opening here, that the depth, the thickness of these walls is expressed, and this molding around maybe should be simpler and a more powerful molding rather than such a delicate molding on. I think that those would help you. I think that would help a lot. The jury is kind of out on this. Sometimes I think since this is just a utility yard, that it's maybe shouldn't be quite so fussy. It should be simplified. Are these 8-foot doors?
Yes.
Maybe.
Potentially 9. I don't think these are maybe.
But for staff, maybe that they should come down and not be quite so grandiose, and that might help the massing of that. That has to be studied. Generally speaking, I think you're headed in the right direction, and I like the insets here. I think that kind of picks up from the front. Simple casements is nice. What is this? Is this kind of a
precast stuff?
If you talked about stone. I don't know if I could support stone. Isn't on the front of the building at all in the architecture. It's all white. I mean, it looks like it was made out of stone and then all painted white because the detail in the engaged columns. And
I think we would propose this be done in white.
Oh, white.
Cast stone.
Yeah. Okay. That would be good. So these could be that too, but they need to be. They need to be more expressive. I think you're being too delicate and too afraid to express the shape and the beauty of these moldings. They're wonderful, and I think the front comes off really wonderfully. But I do think that this is a great improvement over what we saw a couple of weeks ago, and it's headed in the right direction.
Thank you, Commissioner Mann. I almost ran out of paper. That's okay. Commissioner Churi, comments?
Yes, I would. I assume that this number 3 is the entrance, the park entrance is your preferred.
Yeah.
Mine too. And those windows are or are not?
The windows are, but as we just said, I think the idea of creating dimples in between.
He liked these things in between.
I would do not think that that's a good idea. I think the simplicity of this elevation, which has actually been emphasized by your treatment of that, and I think Commissioner Mahan's idea about perhaps lowering that further, that de-emphasizing the entrance a little bit further, and then fiddling around with the profile of that electrical yard. But I think that is something that I would love to see. I mean, I think it makes that elevation important and not broken up. And I think that the less breakup and the more simple, the better. And I understand the wish to bring the elevator tower into the roof to simplify that line, but the elevation as it looks from Anapamu Street is really attractive. When you're looking straight at it from Anapamu, across from Sullivan Goss, looking at what you presented, I think it's a really beautiful, and it looks important. And that corner that was so problematic last time in terms of getting the art in and out, it looks important, and it didn't before. It looked a little fussy. I love the idea of bringing the landscape Lockwood DeForest idea around the corner. I think this is well on its way, and there may be some once again massaging in small ways, but I think that this is getting right where it needs to be. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schellenberg.
Yeah, I also like your first option, probably the best in terms of just rhythm and sort of, well, for sure from the entry, just from a fenestration standpoint. One thing that stood out to me is the existing opening, how narrow the plaster was on either side of the opening, and that just really read very weak. And I know that it's a problem because you're using these 3-foot modules, starting with the doors and working out, and you only have, that's probably a 16-foot structure, so you're left with what you have on the edges, which made number 3 interesting because you're working with two pairs there. And
you mean number 5?
I'm sorry, well, page 5, but option 3.
Sorry, okay,
But you see, so that the modules that you're working with sort of give you more room to play with on either side there. So I don't know if that is something to explore, but I would like to see those sides, especially with the amount of plaster up above, be a little bit more beefy and a little bit more plaster space there. And then I did also like the simplicity of the windows along the upper floor, and that rhythm feels very nice. I don't know about splaying them when we get down to the details, but I don't know that any kind of deep splay really works with this building, which also, same comment on the elevator tower as well. I'm not sure that that architecture is sort of, I don't see that anywhere else on the building. But these are comments, these are just things that jump out as I look at it. On that note of the sides, that's why I asked the question about the receiving doors. That also, to me, feels a little narrow to the sides with the amount of plaster that you have above with the tower, especially in elevation view. I don't know what sheet that is for the receiving facility. No, I want to see the 2D elevation. I don't know what page that was on.
I don't remember either. I don't think it was presented, was it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we saw it.
Yep. Oh, you're right. It was. Here it is.
Big A.
Isn't that it?
Page 11.
Oh, way afield.
Yeah.
It must be folded. It's folded backwards. Here we got it.
Merry Christmas.
There it is. Wow.
By the way, thank you for the existing and proposed. That works really well.
We requested it. Should I put the thank you in the notes? No.
But if you look to the adjacent, the smaller entry, I don't know what, I'm blanking on what the adjacent plank door is serving, but those column pilasters are the same with a lot less massing above, and I don't know that it just feels like it wants to be a little thicker at that door.
Yeah, I would tell you that it's a very complicated thing to achieve. We are the only, we are kind of landlocked on either side.
Right.
I don't really have an option to increase the size of the shaft.
Right. And can we go back, speaking of existing and proposed, page 3, the park wing entrance, I don't know that that's what it looks like, is it? I thought there was a stone arch in the center.
Yeah.
It's just not showing. That's the fenestration behind the freestanding arch.
Otherwise, no, I would agree with the previous comments about how well it's proceeding, and I like that you've come with sort of focusing on certain aspects. This is, I think, helps us narrow the review.
May I ask a question, just in terms of the drawing?
Yeah.
On that illustration. So, just for myself and maybe people who are not architects,
we'll just drop it on the page.
Is the proposal just to bring this across?
You caught us in a drawing error too, so I can steal your pencil. Actually, there is a piece of wall set back slightly from this, so there's a small shadow that actually connects back into this building. I mean, that elevator stops, and we're connecting through that piece to be able to get into the upper floor of the building. So there is a piece of wall. The wall was not in plane with this, but could be. I'm wondering that if it is, should it drop and allow this tower to be expressed, or do you want to just drive it all the way in?
I mean, from here to there, right straight across.
Or if it's higher, it could continue to mimic this, which is a foot or so above the tile.
Yeah, Jamie's just reminding me from my office, Jamie Palencia, that, we really are trying to avoid, there are issues about the ridge line of the clay tile roof there, so we're trying to stay below that ridge.
What do you say we just say that we're asking them to study this? Okay.
That's a good word.
Okay.
Sure, I have one more comment.
Okay,
if we go to the elevation, to the Anapamu
you can even
elevation.
you can also have your set here.
I usually wind up with a lot of pencils.
Anapamu elevation,
Anapamu
which is number
elevation.
11, which, if I recall, we were upside down backwards.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Just off comment, I think that it might be nice if that molding there was a continuation of that molding right there, and would give more mass above that door. That feels weak to me, and that could come across there. I don't know. This this molding here needs to be in scale with that height, and this is too thin. Yeah, it needs to be. It needs to have a, or be doubled or something like this. That's
More like this. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
We can
So
do
I mean,
that.
those are just kind of little nitpicks, but I
Just in
think they
terms of
all
a-
add up to be something that makes it really work.
In terms of polling the commission, do you guys have a feel for
Well,
the door being expressed in either planks of wood or iron?
Yeah.
Blank.
You also haven't heard my comments yet, but I'm in favor of planks.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I also meant to mention that the staff entry, that facade is really, that looks really nice.
Yeah.
I really wanted to compliment you on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
One other comment, Mr.
Guys,
Chair.
I'm going to object.
Okay, well, you know, this little thing here seems to work, whereas around the corner here it was more dramatic. I was like down about a foot or something and up.
Yeah.
And
We will make sure that you see it next time in a more delicate fashion.
Yeah. No, I agree.
We're really trying to paint big picture issues here since the last hearing to make sure that we were kind of moving this in the right way.
Yeah.
Big picture.
I'd like to weigh in myself. So, first of all, I think greatly improved, and thank you for your presentation. I agree with most of the comments. I do favor the simple rectangular opening down at the park entrance. I also prefer the simplified windows. I actually, the one elevation I don't like is the one that's in front of us. I don't think it's successful yet. I know that there's lots of work to be done on that. I think some of the comments that you got will help by, you know, one of the things when working on a historic building is just trying to make sure any of the elements that are being done are really authentic, which is I think what I'm hearing about having the cornice details have the right massing. So it's about that authenticity. That perhaps will help. I think the reason why I have a problem with this is the vent. That seems very uncharacteristic of this kind of architecture. So maybe there's another way to vent it. I think that it's looking to me a little bit like Cyclops type of thing. No, I mean seriously, there's this oculus that's seems.
We're watching you, Barry.
Totally. And I don't know how it fits in with the rest of the architecture. Back to that page 3, I think it was stated about simplifying this. I think having the wall step down might be okay, but I think having the gate step back up would be wrong. I think if you want to keep it all consistent and high, I would keep the whole thing consistent and high. Yeah, so come back and study that. And I think I would just say that the comments that were expressed before, you know, the whole idea is for you to come back and study. I think what was said about some of the detailing and stuff, we'd leave you that ability to do that.
I wanted to just go back to one thing so that the commission knew kind of, I think there are many things that we can do in terms of decoration, and, you know, I think that
string course.
Extending this and creating more mass, easy to do, not a problem. Actually creating a more elaborate cornice structure for this, you know, would also help. I think there's 10 different ways to develop a detail for that. The issue that I really want people to understand is the geometry of this, as we're looking at it, can't change.
I don't think you've been hearing anybody asking for that.
No.
Yeah. So I think we're clear on that. Now, one thing I don't see, the oak tree that was mentioned in the minutes, where's that one back in the drawing?
Well, it's actually here.
Yeah, I was
There
going
is
to
an
say
oak tree to be
it happens to
planted
be
here.
missing. So
It's in the plan, though. It's shown in the plan.
but it's missing this
also shown
elevation.
in the
I'm just mentioning it because our landscape commissioner is not here. It's in the rendering, so let's just keep that. Remember to keep that in.
Chair?
Yes.
At the risk of being a further nuisance, is that vent in the elevator tower, is that see-through?
No.
No.
So that's what I couldn't figure out. What was that
Oh,
orange
because you think
behind
you're
it?
looking at the
Yeah, of
terracotta
course.
behind it. Yeah, yeah.
Of course.
No, it's not.
But
if anything, as this grows, this shrinks, this probably is much more consistent in color and detail to what is happening with the door. So this is going to wind up being a different thing altogether.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I guess the one comment I would say, I don't think tapering is appropriate in this building. You asked that as a question, Commissioner Schelling. The tapering splay, like one time we had the elevations on the facing the library that were all splayed at the bottom of the windows. I don't think they were as successful. So that was my own comment about that. I'd like to summarize the comments and then have somebody make a motion. Are we at that point?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for 2 weeks continuance for the applicant to study the comments that you're going to make.
Okay, thank you.
You got to get a second for that.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we've got motion by Mayhem, seconded by Drury, and you guys will have to say that you're okay with these comments once I've read them. So the elevator tower study, extending it back to the roof of the building behind it as viewed from the library courtyard. Oh boy, I can't read this. Favorable comments in the extension of the Lockwood DeForest design, or emulating the Lockwood DeForest design of the planter walls, extending around the building as a unifying theme. There was stated concern about the lack of landscape on that wall facing the library, on that side of the building. I think it's all been a unanimous preference of the rectilinear entrance, at the park entrance. Prefers the simplified, again, I think it was the first option, it was page 3, fenestration on the upper level facing the library of those punched window openings. Let's see, wanted to see the articulation of the proportions of the building when there's setbacks to doors and what have you to feel more massive, to be more consistent with the detailing in El Pueblo Viejo. Also consistency of when there's molding details, again, to make them more substantial and more sense of the massiveness. Again, any belt courses that, I think they've been omitted, but if there are belt courses, they should not be too delicate. The staff entrance, consider making it still a little less grand, perhaps a foot less tall. There was a preference for the simplicity of the elevator tower building and also the preference for the wood paneled doors. Plank, thank you. And the moldings that would be around the park entrance and elsewhere would be white cast stone so that blend in with the building. Overall, the commissioners felt the project was heading in the right direction, was greatly improved over previously presented. And let's see, and there was an appreciation for how it was presented too, for focusing on areas of details that make it digestible in one meeting. And if anybody wants to add anything to it, is there anything I left out? Commissioner Mayhem.
I think studying the ups and the downs of the gates and the adjacent walls, whether that maybe can be simplified.
Okay, great. I like that too. Okay, is the seconder of the, and I assume the maker was fine since you added in. All right, we are ready to, we did go for 2 weeks. Great. So all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Thanks a lot.
Great.
Bingo.
Okay, Bob.
Oh, when you draw this oak tree in.
Oh, that's right. We forgot to add that too.
Gone? Well, goodbye.
Whoever gave me this, thank you for these. Thank you.
Oh, I know. Well, it goes to San Remo. We don't need that.
So,
you
are
know,
we-
And we need,
Fine staying in session.
Are you privy to all the emails that went back?
Santa Barbara Zoo. We're still behind schedule, so.
Well, I was CC'd on all of them. I didn't CC anybody but Jaime and Bill. I wrote them both this morning.
So-
because I was concerned, you know.
You guys are all okay? Or do you need a 5-minute break? I'm fine. Are you good?
Good. Bye.
Craig, see you in
Thank
2.
Full size.
Gentlemen, are you okay, or do you need a 5-minute break? Do you either need a restroom break? Yeah, okay, so we'll take a 5-minute recess. Okay?
I'd like that.
The longing
Utterson.
Have you introduced it?
Oh, I forgot to introduce the project, sorry. The project is 500 Ninos Drive. It's the Santa Barbara Zoo, and it's for concept review continued. It was last reviewed on November 20th, 2013. And could you make the presentation? I'll see if I have to add anything from the minutes afterwards.
Good afternoon, Kelly Broadison, Community Development. This project is scheduled to go to the Planning Commission for a coastal development permit and also park and recreation zone findings for a minor building in a regional park in the coastal zone. That is scheduled on July 17th, 2014. As you said, on November 20th, the HLC reviewed the project, which is a proposed giraffe barn and a gravel percolation area. And you found the project satisfactory, and you continued the project to the Planning Commission with positive comments, and you asked that they consider a more organic shape to the proposed barn and eliminating the green screen in favor of more willow and sycamore planting. So with that, you sent the project on to the Planning Commission. And then during the actual development review process, staff realized that the compatibility analysis criteria had not been stated in the motion. And just as a technicality, I want to be clear to the Planning Commission that you were fine with it. I don't want to have them wonder. And then the other thing is that when the zoo's master plan was approved in 2006, there was a specific recorded condition of approval that said photographic studies will be required with the future development proposals on this site to determine the effects on the views of the harbor, mountains, and the Andre Clark Bird Refuge, as seen from the hilltop lawn, the Cabrillo lawn, and the walkway between the Condor exhibit and the bird refuge on the zoo property. The applicant shall provide the HLC with site plans, elevations, and photographic studies so that the HLC consider the views from the zoo. So I wanted the applicant just to get that checked off the list before we go to PC. So that's why we're here today, and the project I don't think has changed significantly. I just want to get those things taken care of before it proceeds to the Planning Commission.
When we make a motion today, you'd like a compatibility analysis as part of that motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Understood. I think I was the one who made the motion and didn't do it last time reading the minutes, so. Oh, well, I'm sorry.
It's kind of a tricky because it's not really surrounded by other buildings. It's not normally would be required, but since they're coming back anyways for the PC condition,
Right.
I thought let's just get that taken.
Perfect. That's totally fine. And you covered the minutes, so I won't have to read them. So we're ready to have a presentation. Please introduce yourself and present.
I'm Rich Block. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the zoo.
Welcome.
Ken Radke from Blackbird Architects. Cameron Carrier from Tyne Group, the agent.
Great. Well, welcome. So share as you need. Maybe you want to show us the photographs.
Yeah, right. So we're here pretty much procedurally. That condition back in 2006. If you turn to the last page of the packet, there is a site plan with kind of a legend of where these photos are taken from. From the photo packet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's
all right. You guys can help me out. Thanks. Okay.
Great.
And there's a legend. Okay.
Yeah, so there were 3 areas that the condition specifically addressed. It from the hilltop, which is where you will see numbers 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
There was the Cabrillo lawn, which are numbers 4 and 5, right next to Cabrillo Boulevard there. And then the pathway between the bird refuge and the new Condor exhibit,
Over
photos
here.
6 and 7.
Okay.
And the intent was that any future projects don't impact the views from the inside of the zoo outward.
Okay.
So
we'll walk through these pictures.
Yeah,
Do you
walk
mind
through
if I
our
pull it
photos.
apart?
No.
Go right ahead. Okay. Great. Okay.
Okay, photo 1 on the hilltop of the zoo, looking northeast towards the mountain range. I should also add that our project location, which may be hard to see on this image, is in the southeast corner of the campus here. If you could point, just Ken, could you?
I'm southwest, southeast. It's over here.
Yeah, you're right
Right
there.
there.
There, you're on it.
Yes. So the project is not visible from the hilltop whatsoever, but these 3 photos here will show you that the project does not impact that site.
And when you say that, are there story poles up or simulations, or this is just...
No, the story poles will go up for Planning Commission.
I see.
But there is if you look at photo number 2, that would be in the direction of the proposed project.
I see.
and there's a significant elevation difference there at the zoo and substantial landscape. A palm tree.
Palm tree.
Yeah.
It's actually a missile launch. Okay.
It's, yeah. It's a
Homeland
doctor's
Security
giraffe.
Be careful.
I thought it was a giraffe.
We'd be in trouble if the giraffe was there. So we move down to photo 4.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, that's in the Cabrillo lawn looking outward. It's Cabrillo Boulevard and the beach. You see the ocean just beyond there.
So clearly that's not looking at the site.
Correct. Photo 5 would be looking northeast, back up towards the site. And what you see from Cabrillo lawn is the Cats of Africa project, the existing Cats of Africa project. The giraffe barn is not, the existing giraffe barn is not really visible from this vantage point, so no impact there. We go on to photo 6, 7.
Right. So here's 6.
Oh, sorry.
Well, 6 is here.
Yes.
We've got that. So
Yes.
clearly that's not, and then 7.
That's correct. So photo 6 would be looking back towards the proposed project from the pathway, and significant vegetation, a gorilla exhibit, eagle exhibit are all in between that. that and that.
Are 6 and 7 backward?
Yes, they are.
Well, in
Caught
terms
me.
of the arrows, right?
Yes. So 6 and 7 on the site, on the plan, should be reversed.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Apologies.
Okay. So I think we've got the presentation. Anything else you want to add? Don't have to.
Not to the view studies, no.
Okay. And not for the compatibility analysis. Okay, great. Any questions from the commission? It's open to anybody. I see it not. Would anybody like to? Oh, I didn't open public comment. I'm sorry. Opening public comment. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment. And if we have either comments or somebody who'd like to make a motion?
Make a motion.
Okay.
And we have to include the
Compatibility analysis, please.
Oh, really? The project design complies with all city regulations and is consistent with design guidelines. It's compatible with architectural character, city, and neighborhood. It's appropriate, and it's the project's appropriate size, mass, bulk, and scale. Sensitive to adjacent landmarks and historic resources. Does not affect the public views of the ocean and mountains. And there's an appropriate amount of open space and landscaping.
Okay. I just need to know, the motion that we're making, are we asking this to go into Planning Commission? What is our motion?
Chair Winnick, yes, if you could continue it to Planning Commission, and then it will return back to HLC for project design approval and final approval.
To continue to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. That's what I
Return
needed.
to the HLC for project.
And I think we also want to just say that we've also reviewed the view studies and found them to be acceptable. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yes.
the project won't be visible from
And the project won't be visible.
In conformance with the Planning Commission guidelines.
Okay, and in conformance with the Planning Commission guidelines.
Yes.
Okay, so the maker of the motion's fine
Yes.
with that. Is our note taker? You got everything, Ms. Koo? Thank you. Who would like to second that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. So motion by Drury, second by Sharp. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstained. Thank you. Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we keep one copy, so you can take a copy if you'd like. If you'd like.
take all this?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, you're a nonprofit. You probably want to
Oh, yeah.
keep as many pieces of paper as you can.
Absolutely. We like keeping paper.
Thank
You
you.
want this?
Great.
You want that one?
Perfect.
So that's the next one as well?
Yes.
I think so, and I think we're on to our last item.
And we're only 10 minutes behind now.
Wow, we did really well. Welcome. We're trying our best. So come on in.
La Cubra Junior High School.
Yes, you know that.
I know it well. I was there the year it burned down.
Oh, I never knew it burned.
The whole east wing burned in 1957. We only had to go to school half a day.
Weeks? Oh. I love the Santa Barbara Junior High. That was a lovely building. And the theater?
These are cars on the ends of the
Is it really?
Every one of those outriggers has a different face card.
I don't know if I noticed.
Christmas. You gotta take your binoculars to really appreciate it.
Okay, well, I'll
Kill somebody with one of these things.
What's the matter?
We need new desks to accommodate.
Did something, what's going on here?
Courtesy review.
You want to pull them this way? Sure.
Oh.
We're going to need a wider lens camera. Is that me? It won't be the first time I've done that.
Good Lord.
Okay. We're almost ready. Too much paper, folks. Okay. No, we haven't gotten the new protocol yet here. Okay. I'm going to announce that we have new concept review for a new project, 2225 Modoc Road, which is the Santa Barbara La Cumbre Junior High School. And is there any, I guess the staff doesn't need to say anything, so please introduce yourselves. Welcome and tell us about the project.
Thank you. Thank you for providing this courtesy review for our project. My name is Rosa Alvarado. I'm the architect with PMSM Architects. With me today is Sam Maphis. He's our landscape architect. Steve Flowers is the civil engineer for the Santa Barbara Unified School District. And this is David Hetyoung, Director of Facilities.
Great. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. What we'd like to present to you today is the reconstruction of the existing parking lot in front of the La Cumbre Junior High School campus. It's a complete reconstruction of what exists now. This is a plan.
Tree.
Of the parking lot, the existing condition. As it stands now, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, it's a very awkward parking lot. Not as efficient as it could be in this awkward triangular site. So what we've done, Steve has done, is greatly improved the parking lot, the layout, the circulation, increased the amount of parking spaces, added some landscaping and new lighting, and just overall hugely improved the parking lot in our opinion. I've provided some photographs. I'm not sure if you have them available. If not, I could put them out. But these are
if you have them, it'd be great to see.
Existing conditions here. From the street.
Okay, that's one. Oh, you have other digital photos? Okay, we'll start with these.
This is from Portezuelo.
Yeah, Portezuelo.
Yeah. Okay.
This is on the corner, close to the corner on the site, looking towards one of the main elevations off of Portezuelo. And this is a view from Modoc Road, looking towards the school.
And then there was one more. Hold on. Oh, we saw that one already. Oh, maybe. Oh, and then this one.
A little bit of a closer view from the site in the same direction, general direction to the northwest.
Somebody, I guess, gave us an aerial. So here you go.
Right, so I
Here's
provided
an aerial
what's
view.
there.
Okay.
Project is essentially in this general vicinity here.
This was, even if somebody wants a broader view, just look farther back. Okay.
Very funny.
So we've got the context.
Okay, very good. Flip the sheets here to the proposed.
Okay. How many pages?
It's just one over, I believe.
Okay.
Oh, no, apologies.
No worries.
2 over.
Okay.
Okay. So now, with this new plan, we have one ingress and one egress.
Oh.
And it flows well, and the circulation is smooth. We have designated accessible parking spaces in a much better location, which doesn't require pedestrians to cross any moving traffic within the parking lot.
Right now they're there.
They're in the middle right now. We had to have a crossing aisle there. We have a designated area here for the bus pickup. It's changed substantially. Well, slightly rather, in this area. We have a new plan here if you're interested in looking at it. Unfortunately, we have obtained bids and we had to value engineer some things, and so we've simplified this planter area here in the waiting area for the bus pickup. This project doesn't include any modifications of any kind to any structures. It's strictly contained within the parking lot. Do you have any comments about this before I go on to the proposed lighting?
I think we'll do the comments off the end. Yeah.
Okay, very good. The lighting, you have the drawings for the lighting. I have a cut sheet.
Here they are, Rosa. The actual light standards, is that?
Yeah. So we are proposing new lighting.
E5. So you see the score pattern going along the sidewalk. That's a sidewalk, and this is the flow line of a gutter.
We'll let you guys. Can I interrupt? Because you're going to get to do that. We'll have you do
just
it.
asking a question. Yeah.
I know. Just to,
thank you.
This way, we're going to get the benefit of it too.
Yep. I understand.
Go ahead, Rosa. Gentlemen, focus up. We'll come back there.
Part of this plan does include new lighting fixtures, new lighting standards throughout, pole lighting, and this is the proposed fixture. It's an antique street lamp product called the Resonance.
Okay.
It's an LED fixture.
Does it have a lens? Got it. Okay.
And lastly, the biggest component or the funnest part of the project, I think, is the landscaping.
Okay.
And this set doesn't look like it.
It may have been on top. Who knows? If not, we'll take somebody else's set. Oh, there they are. Okay, good.
And here I'll let Sam take over and explain the proposed plan.
And we have a pointer somewhere which we could give to Sam. Here you go.
Thanks,
Rosa. Feel free to answer the questions that were being asked before.
So, some of the questions that were being answered kind of off camera were about these lines. And as you see, this is a control joint pattern that comes into this little bus area, and we have control joint patterns certainly in the normal regular concrete. This is not colored concrete. It's meant to match the city sidewalk standards, and so this is all being redone based on this grading. You now see this parking lot, which exists without any islands and no trees whatsoever, being redesigned with many tree islands and much more organized flow of traffic. But we do have planting along the street. We do have new trees. These trees, just as I point to them along Portezuelo, are bottle brush trees, callistemon.
Oh, nice.
And the reason we pick these is because they are established and existing on the other side of the street. So we've tried to create this alley as you come down Portezuelo to add some shade and some canopy to the entire street, as well as soften the building from viewing to the north. In the parking lot, we've tried to stay with substantially water-wise and native plantings where possible, so we've chosen this is the Catalina ironwood, Linothamnus, and it is in the islands right here, and here. We have a lot of trees, as Rosa's picture showed, on site that are palms, and these palms are the desire of the school district to kind of make sure that the historical building can be seen. So we're keeping those palms, transplanting them, and adding more queen palms. So these little figures here are the palms that we put in the islands and also addressed along the frontage. We do have two very large eucalyptus that we're retaining that give the building some scale. The other tree we're using, one other main tree, is a jacaranda, which I didn't bring pictures of, but that jacaranda on the corner is intended to soften the entire view as you approach from Modoc and turn onto Portezuelo to continue what is already a very established tree planting grouping along Modoc, which is the jacaranda. So I've added one more to turn the corner and to kind of frame that corner as well as soften it with many understory plants. So the real benefit of this whole change for La Cumbre Junior High is that we're adding shrubs and ground cover and planter areas along Modoc, along Portezuelo, that really softens and creates, I think, a real normal parking lot landscape scheme, as well as we've widened the planters. There's new walkways along the building. We've gotten the planters to be as large as we can. Right now, the paving comes right up to the building in some cases against this side. We pulled it away, and we do have some shrubs like Raphiolepis umbellata, which is a very nice dark green shrub, evergreen, that is a really pretty little white flower. We do have also in this design some sustainable stormwater management things that we're trying to incorporate. We are taking the water into some bioswales. So as these gutters bring water to two areas here and also here, we're trying to create a recharge area and certainly kind of a dry creek, if you will, to charge the water into the groundwater as much as possible. And that is in this location, this location, and this location. Also a little bit of these grasses that I show here will be used for bioswale penetration, which is what we're all trying to do in terms of cleaning up our water as it moves into the storm drainage pattern. This is a shrub that we're using along the base of the building. It's another small version of the bottle brush called Calistoma Little John. And the school district, in all the reasons for keeping the campuses safe, they don't want big bushy shrubs at the base of the buildings. We want to have shrubs that are in a soft, manner, very water-wise and drought-resistant, but we want them up 3 feet, at the maximum 4 feet for safety. We don't want little areas for people to hide and for, things to happen at night that really are around a young campus for junior high school kids. So much of what we've planted here is very accent-wise low and medium size and quite pretty in terms of color by itself and evergreen. And one of the main things that I'm charged with as the landscape architect for many of the school projects is to make it as low maintenance as possible, because it's difficult to keep up with the maintenance on these large campuses for the school district personnel, and so most of these things will hopefully take care of themselves for the most part.
Great. Thanks for the presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Also, just
sure.
For knowledge that may not know, Santa Barbara Community Academy is also located on this campus, and that is a school that has kindergartners. So on the what I'll call
you need to be near the mic. There you go.
Yeah, what I'll call on the entrance on Portezuelo right there goes back to an existing parking lot that is primarily used by Santa Barbara Community Academy. Although staff and parents do park over here, when that one's full, it's a lot smaller lot, so you will have some of that over here. And so when you're on this corner here, we do have young children waiting for parent pickup as well as junior high students. So we kind of want to make sure that that area was appropriate for all ages, K through 8.
Okay, great, thanks. I'm going to open public comment. Seeing no speaker slips, I will close public comment. I think I have a comment from staff.
Yes, I just wanted to point out to the commission that although this is a courtesy review, we'd like to have them comply with our standards for lighting. And I was just looking at their cut sheet, and I wanted just to point out that our outdoor lighting design guidelines call out trying to limit lantern-type fixtures, and also that they would like to encourage the cutoff-type fixtures. And I believe there's some choices here on this type of lantern for the type of cutoff effects. That would be my request, that you try to encourage them to comply. We don't want neighbors to complain about the lighting impacts that might result. And I don't know if the comparison, that analysis has been done. We do ask for photometrics sometimes when these come forward.
You mean too much light at night?
It would be the glare or
Into the residential area.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Limon.
And we have tasked our electrical engineer already in that regard.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm sure it'll come up as a comment, too. Okay, well, great. I'll start with Commissioner Schallenberg. Any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
I don't.
Jury.
No.
And no history? I'm sorry.
No, I do actually, but I'm not going to say anything.
No questions.
Commissioner Stark, Commissioner Mayhem. Okay. You know, the only question I have, because I did want to know a little history, the scale of this building looks to me like it was built to be a high school rather than a junior high. Because I'm new to Santa Barbara, basically. I've only been here 11 years. Was this always a high school?
That's the wing that burned.
Oh.
Correct.
But was it always meant to be a junior high? Never a high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was
When
the
I first
original
came to
junior high
town,
school.
I drove by Santa Barbara Junior High and thought it was a high school.
Yeah, amazing,
But then I saw Santa
amazing
Barbara High School
building.
and said, oh, this is the high school.
Yeah, okay. So just for point fact, but this was the original junior high?
This was the original junior high school. In fact, the original drawings call it as such, and so it's a little confusing when we look at as-builts. We think it's the Santa Barbara Junior High School, and the floor plans are somewhat similar. So, when they built the Santa Barbara Junior High School, they renamed this one, from what I understand.
There you go. Well, I'm glad I asked. Okay, so we're ready for comments. And I'll start again with Commissioner Schauner.
Well, just on the lighting, if this were in our purview, that we would probably request that they be the Malaga green. I don't know if they, and typically we ask that the manufacturer have them come that way, powder coated in that color.
We can
Or
certainly
you can
request
field
that.
apply it, but it doesn't last as long.
They come in custom colors,
Yeah.
so we can certainly request that.
Yeah.
I think the
Malaga green is what you call it.
Yeah.
Very good.
As far as the shape of it actually looks appropriate as far as, I don't know if that's considered lantern or where that comes from, Jaime, but that looks like a typical
cut sheet
canister
for it.
that you see, downtown in El Pueblo Viejo anyway. So I thought it was appropriate from as it's going to sit against that building or in the context of that building, I think it's fine. But I would just make it that dark green color, I think is good for this site.
Great.
I would agree with the comments. I have no further.
No other
Okay.
comments? Well, I'd like to make, I think it looks just great. This is going to be a great improvement to the parking, and also, I think, to the neighborhood, because the landscaping is so much improved. Congratulations.
Thank you, Bill.
Commissioner Sharp?
The chain link fence at the corner is going to remain just like it is?
It's going to be changed to black.
Good.
Vinyl.
That was my...
And it's going to be better concealed, but again, it can't be completely buried because we want that
black is
It'll be
1,000%.
visual safety and sight line for traffic,
Yep.
but black instead of galvanized, yes.
Yep.
Okay, well, great. I'll just make a few comments, too. I think it's a great project. We don't have the benefit of Phil being here today to review the landscape, but from what I'm looking at from the beginning, it seems really great. I think the selection of the trees to complement the trees that are across the street is really nice to make an alley, and I agree with commissioners stating that it's going to be a great improvement for the local residents in the neighborhood, because it's kind of a blighted parking lot. You know, I should have asked a question before. You've added much more of the little planting islands. I'm going to assume that just to ask the question, it still probably doesn't meet the city standards of the number of islands per parking space, correct? And I'm not making this an issue, I just want to be factual.
I think it's every 8, and I go to Steve, I think we didn't do that, but we added islands at the ends where we could. We tried to, again, take care of the numbers of parking stalls and get the right numbers for the school criteria, but I don't think it meets every 8, you're right.
Right. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we're realizing that, but it's still a great improvement, so I would still be in favor of the project, but I just
Sort
wanted
of
to...
6 of one, half does the other with the shapes of these. If you were to do the square footage of the island.
That's true.
it would be-
These are they're larger. the
Yeah,
ends
you're
are
right.
quite-
It might be equivalent.
They're
But even
bulked
so,
out.
it's clearly, it's enhancing the parking lot, and it's a great improvement. The only thing I think I disagree with, I'm not so sure that this light selection, fixture selection, I feel like it's straddling the lines. It looks pretty modern for being a historic or quote antique street lamp. So I would encourage, I think the overall shape is good, but I think if it's going to be looking like an antique looking light fixture that's more historic, I think maybe you might want to look at what else is used in the city as an example. Maybe this is a case where I don't know it's in front of Santa Barbara Junior High or Santa Barbara High School, but maybe go take a look and see if there's a precedent for fixtures that fit in that context, and maybe we could be, almost have a consistent standard around the city. I mean, just like, for instance, on State Street, we have a specific fixture that's been chosen for State Street. I'm not saying that that necessarily has to be the right one, but maybe even that could be the right fixture.
We'll take it into consideration.
Yeah. Do we have any other comments? I think not, so we could make a motion. And I think this was a courtesy review, the way it's been written.
Yes, it is.
Comments only, but we could still put favorable comments into the record. What's required?
Yes, I think that there's no requirement to approve or just forward your comments to the district and have them consider them.
And they're being forwarded to the school district?
That's Mr. Hakakis who's responsible to.
The parking lot lights, the parking lot is in a two-phase project. This project is getting ready to start next week. And the lights, the lights are not going to be done right away this summer. So if you would like, we could come back to you with another light for you to review and provide comments. I mean, we value your comments, so
that would
we'd be more
great.
than happy to do that.
Yeah, and I would think that if you're putting in conduits for the lights, we're probably fine with the locations. I think we just would like you to come back with what the selection
I
is.
think just on consent, though, doesn't need to be full board for a light fixture.
Yeah,
It's not what we would normally do.
I'm fine with that.
I also would encourage them to take a look at our outdoor lighting guidelines, and if you could come back and show that you're in compliance, that would be beneficial. That way we wouldn't get any complaints that you didn't follow our guidelines.
Okay.
Good point.
So do we have, so the comments are, when the lighting does come back, that could come back on consent, that the lighting needs to be in the color of Malaga green, that we'd like them to meet our lighting guidelines and to be more traditional, that the project is a great improvement, that it's parking lot, it's very appreciated, of these improvements to include all the additional landscaping. Also, we should mention that it's nice that it's taking in the consideration for helping with the groundwater. That's another benefit of this project, that it's got the swales. And that the chain link, greatly benefiting the neighborhood. We're also in favor of the chain link fence becoming a black chain link fence. And I think that's what we have to share. Who would like to make that motion?
I will.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Forward these comments to the school district.
School district,
Okay,
right.
forward, great. So, motion by Sharp, seconded by Mahan. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Great. Unanimous.
Thank you very much,
gentlemen.
And we are finished with our meeting, so I'm adjourning our Historic Landmarks meeting of June 4th. Thank you, everyone.
And the rain stops beating on my window pane. If my heart holds out, let it rain, let it pour. It may not be long